So hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to Iconic Universe. So we are back with a brand new movie on what if Deku was Quirkless Teacher Izuku x Nejire Hado movie. But before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. He was late. That wasn't anything new, he was late more often than not. During his stay on Island he had been late to class just about every single day. It wasn't always his fault, sometimes something exploded, other times he simply got distracted. But today it was his fault. He had slept through his alarm and now he was late. On the first day of his new job. His dream job. The job he had desired for years. Ever since he finally accepted that he couldn't be a hero. But that didn't mean he couldn't help others become better heroes. He was late for his first day of teaching at UA and he was losing his mind. How on earth could this happen? Sure, he had been freaking out last night and spent perhaps a bit too much time trying to make sure that his lesson plan was absolutely perfect, and he woke up at his desk and... Wait. He paused. The gate to UA was visible and closed tight. But that wasn't important. Well, it was. But the important thing that was important at this very moment was what he held: his entire lesson plan. His all-might 2 terabytes flash drive that he kept on the lanyard that David had given him his first year at Island U. It wasn't around his neck. Not in his pockets. His pass was there, and so were his keys. But not the lanyard. Shit. He grabbed his bag, spinning it around his shoulder. The shock gauntlet that Melissa had made for him was at the top, and a variety of other gadgets, papers, a datapad, a laptop, old granola bar. But no flash drive. At least not the one he was looking for. Fuck. He was late, unprepared, and he probably didn't look exactly professional. His tie was sloppy, his shirt untucked, and his sweater vest wasn't aligned. And his socks weren't matching. No doubt Melissa and David would be laughing their asses off if they saw him. He should have stayed on Island. Wait, no, sure. He might have had David's offer to be a research assistant to complete his master's, but... He looked up, seeing the glass towers of UA, his heart swelling with purpose. This was where he needed to be. This was where he could do the most good. He looked at the closed gate. But I can't do anything if I'm late. He sprinted towards the security gate. Maybe if he knocked they'd let him in. Wait, the press was there. Did something happen recently? It was only a few days after summer vacation. Did word get out of a new teacher in the middle of the school year? Crap, that's what he gets for being late. He looked at the security wall. Maybe if he was lucky the alarms wouldn't go off since he had a pass. It was high, but he should be able to climb it with something in his... there it was. As to why he had a grappling hook in his bag, was probably best explained by why Melissa saw fit to make a grappling hook and place it in there. It looked like an umbrella. He walked up to the wall and breathed, holding up the grappling hook with both hands. Sheesh, I wanted to become a hero. Now I'm starting to feel like a spy out of a movie. All on my first day on the job. Fantastic. He twisted the top and aimed it at the wall, then pressed the power button. A thin green string shot out from the canister and latched on near the top of the wall. It looked slimy, glistening in the morning sun like dew on the grass. He pressed another button and the grappling hook flew out of his hands and stuck to the wall. Shit. For the next 5 minutes, he jumped trying to reach the gadget, not even getting anywhere close to it. Apparently, while a handheld grappling hook was more than possible, holding onto it was the hard part. In hindsight, it probably would have dislocated my shoulder or something. Speaking of dislocated shoulders, a gruff growl of a voice drew his attention behind him. Behind him stood one of the most intimidating heroes at UA, a hulking man with a wild mane of blonde hair and a bestial appearance, his mouth covered by a muzzle. Ryo Inu, hound dog. The school guidance counselor. Why are you trying to break into the school? Oh, no, I'm not trying to break in. Well, the thing is. He dug through his bag, pulling out his pass. I'm the new teacher here. Izuku Midoriya. Ryo growled, glaring at the pass. You know the door's open if you have one of those, right? Oh, his arms fell. I did not. You know you're late. Yes, I know. Well, yes, but your fly is also undone. Today was so not his day. 4x there was so much that she wanted to know. Why was Aizawa-sensei giving them a quiz? Would they be graded on it? Why didn't he have his own class? Why were they getting a new teacher right after summer vacation? What was quirk theory? Why were they late? Nejire gave a small yawn, spinning her completed quiz around on the table. They haven't even had hero training today and she was already tired. She was far too used to summer vacation and sleeping 12 hours every day. She really needed to be well rested to use her quirk later. It was actually kind of hard to pay attention in class. Aizawa-sensei looked comfortable in his yellow sleeping bag. Maybe he wouldn't mind if she just took a quick nap while the others finished their tests. With another yawn she spread out onto her desk, pressing her cheek against it. Yep, she could sleep like this. She'd need all the energy she could get for hero training. Maybe she should become the sleepy hero Starlight. Nejire. Aizawa's sharp voice prevented her from closing her eyes, his own dead tired and sleep-deprived eyes glaring at her as he sipped some kind of a juice pack. How could someone look so comfy but be so grumpy? No sleeping in class. Ah, come on, sensei, one of her fellow 2B classmates said loudly. It was Hae, the dog-faced boy that was one of the better students in their class, despite his hyena-like face and annoying habit of laughing like one. His quirk was that he could move fast enough to run on water. Nejire needs to rest up so she doesn't end up passing out using her quirk again. Half the class laughed or snickered at that, leaving her cheeks burning. It wasn't like that happened every time, just a few times. Like the sports festival. Twice. If only her quirk didn't use up so much energy. Hey, back off, Mirio, the tall nice blonde nice guy that would stand up for anybody, that sat 2 desks back from her said. She wants to be a hero just like the rest of us. Hae cackled, and what are you going to do about it? Fall out of your clothes again? Pointing out that he tripped 3 times during the relay race event would only make him angry and would result in more teasing. He wasn't even an interesting person. He was just a jerk. The door opened, and in walked a lanky plain-looking guy with freckles on his face and a head full of messy green hair that was haphazardly pulled into a ponytail. His shirt was a white button-up that was partially covered by his sweater vest. A large black messenger bag was hanging off his shoulders. After being at UA for years, she had forgotten what a teacher was actually supposed to look like. Sensei. The green-haired man bowed deeply at Aizawa. I'm sorry I'm late, he stuttered, clapping both hands over his head. Thank you for covering me. Don't thank me yet, Midoriya, Aizawa growled, finally stepping out from his sleeping and glaring at their new teacher. I don't tolerate tardiness, and it's not something you should either. That said, I will be the teacher evaluating you going forward. Right. Midoriya-sensei clapped his hands again and stood straight, shoulders back, looking proud. Then he looked towards them. His shoulders fell and his posture crumbled. His mouth moved but no words came out. Aizawa coughed. Right, he said loudly, resetting and marched towards the whiteboard. The marker screeched as he spelled his name on the board, both in kanji and English. My name is Izuku Midoriya, and I will be your instructor in quirk theory and applications. He turned towards them, blinking for a moment before digging into his bag once more. A moment later he sighed and put the bag back, a small frown on his face. Right then, I suppose I should explain what exactly that is, unless anybody has any questions first, or should I save that for the... Where are you from? How old are you? Why are you teaching us? She asked, all but jumping out of her seat. What should we call you? Oh, Nejire Hado, right? He asked, nodding to himself before she could respond. Your quirk is called wave motion, right, and you can use your own energy to produce powerful blasts. If she could hit anything. Hae snickered. To answer questions, I'm local, but I studied at I Island for a few years. I'm 21 years old, and I'm teaching you to help you make a difference in the world. He shrugged, turning back towards the board, writing down what looked like a lesson plan. And you can call me Midoriya-sensei. Is there anything? Is that your hero costume? One of her classmates asked. What's your hero name? Another asked. What's your quirk? She joined in, raising her hand. He was so young for a teacher. He was around 3 years older than her. That was so cool, and quirk theory sounded exciting. Oh, his nervous smile vanished and he rubbed that back of his, looking sheepish. I don't really have any of those things. I'm not a hero, and I don't have a quirk. He shrugged. I'm just a quirkless guy that likes quirks. What the heck? One student shouted. Aizawa-sensei. Hae pointed at him with one hand open. What on earth can this quirkless nobody teach us about being a hero? Midoriya-sensei looked down, turning his attention to his bag once more. Aizawa glared at the obnoxious punk. You, Aizawa-sensei, Midoriya-sensei interrupted, his voice was firm. Let me handle this. To answer your question, Hae, I'd like to use Aizawa-sensei as an example. You see, when you fight against him, you specifically are quirkless. Indeed, if you're not a mutation type, chances are if you fight Aizawa-sensei you're going to lose. Izuku looked up, pulling out a few stacks of books. One half of quirk theory is to help you analyze quirks that might cause you problems, or even quirks that won't cause you any problems. The other half is, he pulled out a few more notebooks. They were all fresh and clean. Understanding your own quirk so that you can improve upon yourselves and become the best you can be. And how are you supposed to do that? One student asked. You don't know anything about our quirks. Midoriya-sensei. Aizawa stepped forward, a serious scowl on his face as he stressed that word as though to remind them that they should be showing him so much more respect than they have been. has forgotten more about quirks in 4 years than you will ever know. If you cared half as much about your own quirk as he cared about any quirk, you might just make a halfway decent pro. Midoriya-sensei's cheeks went flushed, and his fingers drummed over the edge of the podium. His eyes locked onto the notebooks as he sucked on his lip. He took a short breath and looked right at them, before closing his eyes for a long time. For someone with a relatively basic quirk that just makes you strong, makes you faster. With simple stuff like that, I suppose that understanding your own quirk isn't really that important. Besides, he drummed his fingers and slapped his hand on the podium, before turning to pace in front of the whiteboard. It's your quirk, right? Who would know it better than you? So why should you listen to me? I don't even have my own quirk, so how could I ever help you understand yours? Midoriya-sensei turned and looked at them all. The fidgeting he had shown earlier was all but gone as his hands were balled into tight fists. But I think that I should be able to show it to you. So let's skip to the practical portion for today, and I'll show you why not only understanding your own quirk but your opponent's quirk as well can make a difference. The gymnasium should be free right now. Aizawa huffed his shoulders, a small smile cracked on his face that looked nothing but creepy. I look forward to seeing the results. In a few minutes, they were dressed in their gym clothes and standing in one of the planar gyms with only a few concrete walls acting as obstacles on otherwise flat ground. She stood near Mirio and Tamaki. Really, aside from Yu, they were her closest friends and she wasn't in the hero class. Aizawa-sensei stood near the door, arms crossed, still looking like he was ready to expel them at the drop of a hat. And she really wanted to know if they were going to be graded on that quiz. But asking him was kind of scary. Midoriya-sensei stood, still dressed exactly how a teacher should be dressed, smiling meekly at them. The confidence he had early was all but gone. Sensei. She held up her hand. What are you going to show us? Oh, he jumped, looking around and flexed his fingers once more. Well, he took another breath. Right then. Hiei Sava, your quirk is speed right, and you placed third during the sports festival, correct? Yay, that's right. Hiei cackled, one hand rubbing his snout. Nice to know you've done your research, sensei. He spoke that last word mockingly. I spent the summer researching and analyzing all of your quirks, even calling in your sponsors from both years. Midoriya-sensei nodded, before gesturing towards his side. Why don't you come first? I want you to pick your opponent, preferably someone that you know you'll beat. Huh? The hyena-faced jerk barked. I can beat a slowpoke like Nejire every day of the week. He wasn't really wrong. He could move faster than her wave blasts if she could even fire one before he got to her. Midoriya-sensei clapped his hands, smiling brightly. Alright then, Nejire, please come on over here. She wanted to protest, to try and get someone else to do this, but she was one of the people to ask him what his quirk was. She really needed to work on being more sensitive with her questions. Mirio pushed on her back and she stepped forward, turning back to see him give her a thumbs up. Okay, sensei. She might have dragged her feet heading over to him, biting her lip as she stared at Hiei. She was so not ready for a sparring match right now. Even her stomach was roiling, making the room spin. If she unleashed too strong of a blast, she'd probably pass out, but there was no backing down. She stood next to Midoriya-sensei and flopped her arms. What am I supposed to do? The objective will be to knock the other person on the ground first. I'd rather not have Recovery Girl mad at me on my first day. A few students chuckled at that. He gestured away from where Hiei was standing and walked with her the rest of the way. Is it okay if I whisper in your ear? She nodded and he leaned in close, his arm hovering over her shoulder like he was trying to keep others from seeing them. He was so close. His quirk isn't really speed, he can only travel in a straight line, and anything that's more than a few inches difference can cause him to trip. He also has problems slowing down. His quirk might just be something closer to linear acceleration. I don't know, it's really interesting how it works because he always looks for where he's going to go. It could be something. Sensei, she said, looking him in the eyes. I think you're mumbling. Oh, sorry. He placed a hand over his mouth to hide his smile and his blush. I really like quirks. It was kind of cute how excited he got about them. So, what do I do? She asked, keeping her eyes focused on him. Even if I know where he's going to be, I can't hit him, he's too fast. You're not going to hit him. His smile only grew. You can channel your quirk into your feet, right? Yay, she nodded. It's harder to aim, but it's just as easy as my arms. She could really do it from any part of her body, but a stomach wave was kind of hard to aim. Alright. Right at the start, channel a big blast directly into the ground. Okay. She had no idea how that was going to do anything. Well, it was going to be quick no matter what she did. Are you ready? I think so. Right then, Midoriya-sensei backed away, holding one hand up in the air. First, one to knock the other on the ground wins. This will be easy. Hiei taunted, popping his shoulders and stretching his legs. She nodded, taking a breath and focusing on her legs. Just channel a big blast into the ground. That should be easy. She was good at hitting the ground. Was it cheating that she was already gathering energy to use in her quirk? Hopefully, this would go well. 3, 2, 1. Begin. She closed her eyes, releasing the energy pent up in her legs. First, the ground cracked, then the wind blasted her in the face. Then she found herself weightless. She opened her eyes, to find herself 5 feet off the ground. A sudden sense of vertigo overtaking her, like her blood sugar had just dropped to 0. Yep. She used too much power. She could barely move her arms. But she could scream. She shrieked for half of a second as she began to fall back towards the ground. Nejire. She heard Mirio and a couple of others call out to her. This was going to hurt. I got you. Somebody caught her, breaking her fall into 2 stages, crashing into him, and then both of them crashing onto the ground, mostly unhurt. Are you okay, Nejire? She opened her eyes, finding herself awkwardly across the now prone Midoriya-sensei, who was halfway under her. She pushed herself up, arms trembling and feeling rather cold. I'm not hurt. Just tired. Right, sorry. He got up, helping her up in the process. Forgot your quirk uses your own energy. But hey, you won. That woke her up. She blinked, focusing on the ground. A perfect spiral of concrete had risen out of the ground about a foot at the center and tapering off at the outside edges. And on the other side, pushing himself up off the ground, was Hiei, his knee bloodied. I won? She asked, looking at Midoriya-sensei, still holding onto his shoulders. She tripped him? By making the ground uneven with her own quirk. Why didn't she think of something like that? Her new sensei nodded, smiling at her. I knew you could do it. You have a really amazing quirk. You just need to train it. 4x. I'm reducing the size of your class, Aizawa said the moment they entered the teacher's lounge. He stopped in his tracks, the door sliding to a stop. What? Why? Was it that bad? Most of the students that followed his advice had come out on top, or at the very least performed marginally better than they had in previous matches. But this wasn't just something that could be shown with just a single day. He needed more time. I need more time, sensei, please. You know how long it takes to make a difference. It's too soon to. This isn't about making a difference, Aizawa muttered, sitting at his own desk and pulling at a binder. This about training you. I had a feeling that you were too young to handle so many students at once after never teaching a day in your life. I've given lectures to I-Island University students, not heroes in training. He had half a point at I-Island. The worst he ever got was someone snickering at bad grammar or something equally mundane. Aizawa looked at him, pulling out a pen and opening up one of the binders. I don't have a class of my own this year. Instead, I'm trying to make certain that your class is worth something. Personally, I think that it is. But I also think that 30 students is out of your skill range. Now, let's discuss what students would benefit most from your class. He took a small breath, taking the seat next to Aizawa and looking over to the roster. A smaller class would help him teach. Sensei, I promise that in the next sports festival the top 3 places will be held by my students. A wild smile grew on Aizawa's face. I look forward to seeing the results. Yu. His class is so amazing. In the lecture the other day he was able to answer all of my questions. I don't even remember all of his answers. But I can tell you that of the types of quirks, mutations types tend to be the weakest, but also among the most reliable kind. They also tend to pass down. That's probably why I have blue hair, or why some people have weird heads. Nejire hummed to herself, taking a bite of the school lunch. As always, the food here at UA was just the best thing ever, especially because it was her best chance to hang out with Yu. It's quirk analysis, right? Yu asked, raising her pierced eyebrow. Her hair this month was a shifting blue to pink color that just looked great on her. That really sounds like something that the support classes or even the general classes would need more than the hero course. Mirio coughed, sitting upright at their table, his back straight, the muscle he'd been putting on showing as he moved his arm like he was a robot. There's actually a lot that us in the hero class can learn from him. It's only been a few days, but I feel like he'll be an even better teacher for me than Sir Night-Eye was. If that was true, Tamaki grumbled, poking at his lunch with a disgusted look on his face. It was chicken. A chicken-hearted boy like him should love it. Then why did they cut the class size by half? And why didn't the top students stay? Right. Yu nodded, holding a bit of rice and pointing it at her. Her voice was low and harsh. I think a few people have started calling it the remedial class. That he was hired because most of the 2B students didn't do well in the sports festival. Because they kept arguing with Midoriya-sensei. Besides, he's still new to teaching. It's his first year. And he was so young, easily the youngest teacher in the school. Wait, was Nezu young? What was a hamster bear's lifespan? And really, they have to spend 2 whole hours with Aizawa-sensei. I'd much rather be with Midoriya-sensei. Yu Yu's face twisted into a frown. Still, doesn't it sound kind of just odd or something? Nope. 4x The most challenging part of teaching was actually acquiring all of the equipment he needed in order to train his students in the practical portion of his class. While it still stung that he wasn't good enough to teach a full class, there were a lot of benefits to having a smaller class size. Such as students that were more than eager to listen and ask questions in class. And he was able to go all out in personal training routines designed for targeting his students' weak points and pushing them to their limits. The damage Nejire's quirk had done to the gym floor had been repaired the next day, and all of the equipment he had asked for was either set up or stored nearby. Izuku couldn't help but smile as he drummed his fingers along his clipboard. This was it. This was what he had been dreaming of. It was time to take a theory and test it, to turn it into something useful and show the world that they had so much more they could learn from. Sensei. Nejire Hado, the long blue-haired female student, bounced up next to him, a brilliant smile on her face. You're mumbling again. Oh, right. Thank you, Nejire. He stood straight and turned to his dozen or so other students, all standing in the gym uniforms and waiting for his command. All right. I know many of you have been eager to get out and see what the practical portion of the class entails, and I'd like to thank you all for waiting. I'm sorry it took so long for me to gather the materials. Maybe you should stop sleeping in so much, Sensei? One of his female students shouted. You were late again this morning. And he was caught again. His cheeks burned and he turned away from them, looking at some of the equipment, only to see Nejire still standing just a bit too close to him and staring right at him. Right, well, I'm not here to teach you about punctuality. He turned on his feet, trying to ignore how close Nejire was to him, and pointed towards one of the walls. A set of automatic pitchers were set up and aimed at a wall with a tarp placed nearby. I am here to teach you how to better understand your quirks. He turned back towards his class. Many of them looked like they didn't want to be here. A few looked at him with curiosity, and a few with respect. They were grading him as well. He needed to earn their admiration. That meant going even further beyond the duties of a teacher. Quirks come in many shapes and sizes. Some quirks are easy to use and easy to see the raw power behind them. Other quirks are more subtle, weird, or just don't seem that great. But, with a great deal of creativity and training, can push you beyond your limits. A good example of this is the current rank 4th pro hero Best Jeanist. His quirk manipulating threads doesn't sound that powerful, but through training and creative uses he has made his quirk one of the most powerful and versatile in Japan. He breathed. He had all of their attention, especially Mirio, who was pumping his arms in excitement. He might be biased, but he was eager to start working on his quirk, his and Tamaki's as well as Nejire's. But they needed to work hard. They all did. The goal of my class is to help you develop your quirks, so that you can become a better hero. But I can only go so far. Most of the work will be done by you. And it will be hard. But as aspiring heroes you should be used to hard work, right? Yes, sir. Mirio shouted, pumping his arms and smiling at him. It was hard not to like such an enthusiastic student. The others nodded, their faces showing the same determination that got them to where they are now. All right then, start by running around the gym until I call your name. I'll need to explain what I think a few of you should do, so be patient until then. Yes, Sensei. Mirio, you're up first. The large blonde student strutted over to him, eagerly bouncing on his feet. What's my training today, Sensei? It's going to be about the speed and reaction time of your quirk. He led him over to the automatic pitchers. They were modified by the support class and were close enough to what he wanted. Still, back at Island, Melissa probably would have made him something fancier. He stopped at one of the buckets placed near one of the machines, pulling out a blue ball and a red ball, each about the size of an apple. Your goal is to catch the blue ones while letting the red ones pass through you. Oh, that's clever, Sensei. Mirio clapped his hands and reached down into one of the buckets and squeezing one of the balls. But, what should I do if they aim for my legs? Should I dodge? I don't want the class to see my willy any more than normal. Willy. He pointed towards the tarp. That's what that's for, that way you can practice in privacy. Excellent, I'll set it up right away, Sensei. Mirio saluted him and ran over to the tarp, eagerly figuring out how to set it up. I'd start off with one at a time until you get into the swing of things. 3 minutes later, and he heard all 3 pitching machines going at full speed and the occasional grunt from Mirio. Well, he was a UA student after all. He didn't have a unique training for each student. Some were just using their quirk to hit a moving target. Others worked in pairs. For someone like Tamaki, he just had him use his quirk over and over again in different ways. Others were similar. After all, There was only so much planning he could do for their quirks, and a lot of it just came down to practice and hard work. Sensei. Nejire bounded up next to him, somehow still managing to have the energy to smile. That wouldn't last long. What's my training? I'm the last one, right? I bet it's going to be super awesome or something that I never would have thought of. He tried not to smile. Well, your quirk uses your own endurance and stamina, right? Yep. If I use it too much then I get really sleepy and hungry. She placed her hands on her knees and taking a great couple breaths while panting. Right, I saw your fight at the sports festival. Her face turned red, so that it clashed with her light blue hair. Her smile vanished as she sucked on her bottom lip. Not my best moment. No, but it does show you what you need to work on. He moved towards where most of the gear he had asked for was piled on. There are many different ways to train endurance. I'd normally try to have you use your quirk to build up your skills with it while also increasing your endurance, but it sounds like your quirk wears you out too fast for that to be effective. He dug into one of the boxes, pulling out a large weighted backpack that was absolutely perfect. As to why there were a dozen of them, he hadn't the slightest clue. So, he saw Nejire flinch as she looked at the bag, somehow looking even more tired than normal. What exactly am I going to be doing? You're going to run. He smiled, helping her put the bag on. A lot, at least until you're able to continuously use your quirk well enough to train with it. Her shoulders slumped when the full weight of the bag hit her. Midoriya-sensei, you suck. Thank me later, now get running, Nejire. 4x a whole month of running and she had almost nothing to show for it. She didn't even lose any weight. If anything, she'd gained 2 pounds. Midoriya-sensei's class sucks. She half-whined while kicking her feet and flailing her arms before falling back down onto the table to glare at her half-eaten food. Eat not enough and she'd pass out or have to go to the nurses. Eat too much and she'd have to puke. Then after class, she'd be so tired and hungry she'd go eat the biggest bowl of ramen she could find twice. Yu hummed, poking at her own lunch. Yay, you guys haven't been looking well since you started his training. Is it even helping? I can grow gills, Tamaki mumbled, his eye twitching. Last night, I forgot what my eye looked like and accidentally left it as a bird eye all the way home. He poked his food again. I'm worried I'll lay an egg eventually. Nonsense. Where's your heroic spirit? Mirio slammed a hand onto the table, his smile only outclassed by his most recent black eye. I can feel it, Midoriya-sensei's training is going to pay off. I can already phase through things much faster than before, and his ideas for how to train my quirk are interesting. Lucky for you, she muttered, blowing a strand of her hair out of her face. I've just been running and cycling. I haven't used my quirk in his class since the first day. I'm sure if you asked him for something different he could figure something out. Yu shrugged, pushing a strand of her now green hair out of her face. Isn't he some kind of an egghead or something? I tried that. He said I could also start swimming or dancing after class. I think he thought I was asking to do more. Even if both of those things would help her, and did sound fun, after class she barely had enough energy to do her homework. Adding on dancing or even swimming to that would just break her more. She felt Mirio slap her on the back. Come now, Nejire. You can do this. You like his lecture, right? Yay, she huffed, sitting upright once more and rolling her shoulders before poking at her food once more. I'm still going to give it my all. Even if it was just running all day. 4x the gym that Midoriya-sensei had basically taken over had begun to earn the nickname, the playground. Largely because of all the various toy-like equipment that was being added to it. From a rope course to a climbing wall there was something to challenge every quirk. Except for her. Nejire sighed, staring at the heavy-weighted backpack she had been wearing every day for the past month. It felt heavier than before, almost like Midoriya-sensei had been increasing the weight when she wasn't looking. At least she didn't have any back pains yet, no matter what Yu said. Well, she might as well get started. Everybody else had already started their own cool or interesting quirk training. Why couldn't she be doing target practice or something like what Mirio was doing? Nejire. Midoriya-sensei smiled at her like he wasn't a slave driver. Technically he wasn't, he never made them run, but there was just something about him that made her want to give it her all. She put the backpack on and sighed. Yes, sensei, I'll start running. What? No, I thought you were sick of that, but if you want to run. She turned, sprinting towards him with more force than she thought possible, nearly tripping over her own feet to stop next to him. He was standing next to a set of stacked plastic platforms that were probably a meter wide and half as long. What? No, I'll do it. What's the training? He slapped one of the platforms, smiling ear to ear. Somehow, despite being their teacher for a month, he still looked mildly sloppy, but it suited him. At the very least he changed shirts every day. Today was a soft purple that mixed well with his green hair. I want you to get on top of this. Okay. She placed her foot in one of the braces and used her arms to push herself up. She felt tall for once standing on top of the platform. Then she flopped her arms, looking back down at Midoriya-sensei. Now what? Get down, and do it again, this time without your arms. Am I supposed to use my teeth? Come on Nejire, you're one of my smartest students, you should be able to figure it out. She blinked, then hopped down onto the ground, and stared at the platform. Her heart was racing as she felt its height. The top was chest level with her, but didn't she go much higher when she fought against Hyei? She didn't need to crack the concrete, and she didn't need to go that high, but she did need to go forward. She pushed out of her feet and took off, just a foot off the ground and away from the blocks. That's the idea. Midoriya gave her a cheerful laugh, rubbing the ground with his foot where she had just been standing. Do you think you'll need some padding for when you fall? Maybe. She pushed herself off the ground, but I don't plan on falling for very long. She launched again, this time going much higher, too high, and forward, too far forward, and crashed into a wall. Midoriya-sensei was there to help her stand back up. Don't try for speed just yet, try to use your quirk to steer in the air as well, give yourself a lot of time. Once you can land on the blocks, then we can try and work on speed. She took his hand and stared at him for a few moments, her heart racing as she stood captivated by his smile. This is a great idea Midoriya-sensei. Being able to use my quirk to jump will make me not such a slowpoke. He gave a soft laugh, taking his hand away from her and marking something down on his clipboard. Jumping? Nejire, I think that with a lot of practice you'll be able to fly and float like a fairy. That idea, that one promise, made the entire last month of running instantly worth it. The momentum of her wave kept her stuck against the vertical wall, the mats on the ground eagerly waiting for her to hesitate and fall. They barely helped the fall. Her sweat-soaked palms and bare feet pressed against the coarse fabric that covered the platform, a recent addition after a few too many splinters, crashes, and bruises from the usual wood. This one was the easy one, just a straight shot from the last platform. Now she needed to dodge a padded wooden beam that was blocking her direct path. Nejire let out a breath. The force that was keeping her pinned to the wall was fading and she needed to act before gravity won. And she added yet another faceplant to the floor. She pushed off, just like pushing off the wall at the pool. If only it wasn't November, or if UA had a heated pool, they should have a heated pool. She shot under the wooden beam, then shot a wave out forward and downward at the same time. It sent her more up, but also backward, forcing her into the beam hard enough to knock the air out of her. She caught onto it with one arm just long enough to help her fall to the floor, not completely suck. To her disappointment, she landed on her feet. If she had landed on her back, maybe she could have taken a nap. With a groan that was half frustration and half exhaustion, she let her body fall the rest of the way and stared up at her training course. It was several odd-angled target platforms with obstacles in the way that she had to steer out of the way, all orbiting a large pillar that went all the way to the top. Midoriya-sensei had a lot of faith in her ability to not fall to her death, which was fair. One of the first things she learned was how to soften a fall by blasting downwards. It only made the faceplants hurt her slightly less. Nejire, her oh-so-favorite and most hated teacher, walked over to her, a whistle around his neck, and that clipboard he carried around was overflowing with papers. One of his sleeves was ripped at the elbow. You okay? Sensei, she whined, squirming on the ground a bit while looking him in the eyes. She wanted to take a nap. Her stomach was already grumbling and it felt like she had been running all day. But, as much as she hated to admit it, she still had plenty of energy left. Stupid endurance training. At least she didn't pass out after using 1.5 max blasts. What happened to your sleeve? Oh, I'm not entirely sure. He turned, looking at his sleeve, spinning in a circle like a dog chasing its tail. I think I lost it when someone else was using their quirk. Weird how there's no blood though. He shrugged. I also could have just lost it by shutting the door on it. Wouldn't be the first time. Sensei, she flopped onto her stomach, chin resting on the mat as she looked up at him. You're a bit weird. Thanks. He smiled, walking over to offer her a hand up. How goes the obstacle course? She took Midoriya-sensei's hand and he pulled up her easier than she thought he would. He might look kind of scrawny, but he was actually still not really that strong. She was just light. I'm starting to think that maybe I should be doing this in the pool or something so I won't have to worry about crashing. You're going to have to deal with crashing eventually, even if we did use the pool. He patted her on her shoulder and walked over to her starting platform. While you'd be safer in the pool while you figured out to move around, you'd also grow used to the water resistance and water physics as well. Which means that instead of just learning how to fly, you'd have to forget how to swim first. I know it doesn't exactly work like that, but... He shrugged, flashing that stupid smile he had that made them all want to go even further beyond. Sure, maybe All Might had a smile that made people feel safe, but Midoriya-sensei's smile just said, "You can do it, with the force of 1,000 cheerleaders." He patted the starting location, beckoning her to try once more. "You know, this is kind of like a run before you walk thing. Now come on, show me what you can do." She wanted to whine, but at the same time, she didn't want Midoriya-sensei to see her complain. Mostly because he'd either ignore it or try to motivate her again. Okay. She shook her hands and hopped onto the starting point. Really, the whole exercise was like playing the floor is lava while using just her quirk. Here it goes. She took off, half jumping towards the first platform and half using her quirk to propel herself upwards. She was getting good at super jumps at this point. The first platform was higher than the first, higher than most people could jump, but the second platform was lower and further away. With a running start, she pushed herself forward, using her quirk to blast herself forward onto the second platform and barely managing to land on top of it. The next one was tricky. While the first and second platforms were flat, the next four were all vertical. She bounced to the edge of the platform and ran, jumping towards the next one and hitting it without using her quirk. She kicked off, blasting downward to reach the next one. With a flip she kicked off to her next target, using her quirk to push herself towards it. The momentum kept her there for a second, and she glared up at the padded wooden beam that was a pain in the ass. "Nejire," Midoriya-sensei spoke up. He was right below her, blinking at her. "It's good that you can make it that far, but why don't you try it with just your quirk?" She grabbed onto the top of the platform, fingers straining under her weight as she tried to look down. "Just my quirk? That's what I was doing. I mean without running or jumping." He shook his head and stepped back. "Get down, I think we might need to try another exercise for you." She plopped down onto the ground next to him, her tongue half out of her mouth. Another exercise? That just meant more torture. Even if it was actually helping her. Like a lot. During hero training last week she was able to continuously use her energy waves without passing out. She did want to take a nap afterward. "I'm not going to like this, am I?" "Nope." Midoriya-sensei said that with a degree of joy that had slowly been building as he kept coming up with new ways for them to develop their quirks. He was starting to enjoy their suffering. "A lot. But I think it's the step we're missing for your flight." His foot tapped her side. "Now stand up, I think I know what to do. Actually, you might be able to do this lying down." She raised an eyebrow at her sensei, half glaring at him. "What's the catch? You're not allowed to be on the ground." His smile turned clever, and he tapped his chin. "Oh, yay, that should actually be very helpful. And now, what you should do is simple. Use your quirk to keep your entire body an inch off the ground. Keep going for as long as you can, but don't go too high. The idea is to focus on keeping you level." "That's it. That sounds easy." A moment later she was flipped on her head as she misjudged how much force she needed and then flopped onto her face. She heard Midoriya-sensei snort. "Sensei." She whined, looking at him as he hid part of his face behind his clipboard. "Don't laugh at your students, it's mean." Sorry. He did not sound sorry, and he somehow made laying down into a form of training. 4x There was something about Mirio's quirk that just made him happy. That and the tall muscular student was easily in his top 3 students. Was it wrong to already have favorites? Yes, but he was still learning to be a teacher. It was natural for him to make some mistakes. Besides, Mirio just had this whole, never give up, attitude that most students lacked. Tamaki seemed to feast off that energy while Nejire just couldn't stand not being the most optimistic person in the room and matched him whenever they were within 5 feet of each other. The others also seemed to get a kick out of watching him train his quirk, when he wasn't naked. Izuku smiled looking at the ball in his hand. He only had about 20 of these and they were one use only. The support class was really starting to hate him and his incredibly specific requests for new training gadgets. Technically this design was someone's final project though. "Alright Mirio, you remember our first exercise? Dodging the balls?" Mirio grabbed his shoulder and rolled his neck. Much of the class had gotten used to Mirio's random acts of nudity, so him being shirtless during training had just become commonplace. And as long as the pants were on and his willy contained, nobody would complain. Wait, was he really using willy now? Mirio was contagious. "Have you finally run out of new ideas, sensei?" Mirio taunted, clapping his hands and dropping into his dodging stance. "I thought you were getting low when I had to run through the red walls but break the green ones." "You wish." He tossed one of the balls at Mirio. His student caught it easily. "Inside that ball, there's a sphere, each one has something inside of it." Digging into his pocket he pulled out a small device with 4 lights on it. 2 have a button and another 2 have a switch. Your job is to stick your finger in there and turn off these lights. The rest are half filled with something else. No idea what, though I think they wanted to surprise you. "I see." Mirio smiled looking at the ball. That's clever, sensei. It could be useful if I ever have to disarm a bomb in the future. Let's hope it never comes to that. The primary goal is to increase your finesse with your quirk. Then why are they inside balls? Wooden boxes do. Oh, that's for phase 2. I grabbed another one of the balls. It had a slightly different pattern than the other one. Each one looks unique, and once you figure out which ones have what, it's back to the pitching machines. Mirio laughed, tongue sticking out of his mouth as he focused on the ball in his hand, a finger slowly entering it. A moment later his hand shot up above the ball as his fingers were forced out. Oh, this is going to be tricky, sensei, but I accept your challenge. With Mirio set on his new training now, all he had to do was. Something bumped into his leg. Looking down he saw Nejire. Her hair tied into a ponytail and held tight in her hands to keep it off the ground as she floated 2 inches off the ground. Her face was twisted into one that he could only describe as constipated. Going for a stroll, Nejire? Her eyes focused and she looked up at him, a smile appearing on her face. Someone bumped into me a while ago, and I've been floating aimlessly ever since. If it didn't feel like I was doing 10,000 push-ups constantly, this would be a lot of fun. She pulled up her shirt just enough to show off her smooth belly. As a teacher, Izuku did the only thing he could think of, which was to look away as fast as possible. He heard Nejire pat her stomach. I don't even get abs for doing this. Nejire, please, don't do that. He glanced back and saw her covering her stomach again. It's good that you're getting used to the exercise. Do you think you can go back to your area? I don't want you to get hurt if someone tripped on you. Not really, she hummed, slowly spinning in place. I can barely talk and do this at the same time. Do you think you can give me a small push back to safety, sensei? Why not just walk? Just give me a push, sensei. She pouted, her blue eyes boring into him. I'm in a good spot right now, I don't want to. She fell onto the ground with a brief, BWEH, and blinked. Lose it. Maybe you should try doing it while standing up now. Or maybe from your front or side now, though still, just hovering is doing great. He paused, smiling at her, and tapping his clipboard again. He bit his tongue trying not to let Nejire read his face. She was getting way too good at figuring him out. Sensei. There was a hint of suspicion in her voice. A single blue eyebrow was raised at him. What are you thinking? You're not thinking about making me spin while I'm floating, are you? Darn. Why was she so good at figuring him out? I was. It would help you learn to stabilize yourself and eventually control your direction. He sighed, tapping his clipboard again. Though that's probably a bad idea. I don't want to make one of my students puke. Liar, Nejire groaned, standing up and wobbling for a few moments. She spun for a moment for no other reason than to spin, and faced him, her hands clasped behind her back. But that's why we like you, sensei. She bobbed forward, tilting her head just the slightest amount. You're not afraid to push us to push ourselves to the limit. The other teachers don't do that. He had seen what Aizawa had been doing to his students. That was borderline child abuse. She shook her head. It's not quite the same, ya know. Like, I don't know. She shrugged and spun around, bounding off to her obstacle course. Well, anyways, sensei, back to work. He couldn't help but smile. The near constant barrage of praise he got from his students, especially Nejire and Mirio, was probably why he wasn't overflowing with self-doubt. He really should get Aizawa a gift basket or something for taking the troublesome students. Izuku looked out at the cold winter landscape that had greeted him on his first day back to UA after winter break and sniffled his nose. He wasn't really sick, but just looking at the blanket of snow that was still damaged from the students and faculty moving about was enough to make him want to spend the whole day bundled up and drinking hot soup. It was already 10. Normally snow was a once-a-year thing and only lasted until noon at the latest, but today was proving to be an exception as snow still drifted downwards lazily. It also didn't help that on his first day back he had been given a giant workload, evaluating applications for the first years that will be joining in 4 months. Logically it made sense. After all, he had the lightest workload, and with his knowledge of quirks and his background, it made sense that he should have at least some voice in deciding where students should and shouldn't go. Especially with how the entrance exam normally works. Giant robots just didn't do it with more subtle quirks. Maybe he should think of developing some other exam? Or even take it upon himself to interview the students. Nezu might go with it. At least for this year, until he could take on more classes. Ideally, he'd be able to teach the first years and second years for the hero course. And assuming Aizawa didn't expel his class again, that would give him 4 classes a day. Which was technically doable. He sighed, shuffling the triple-stacked boxes filled with applications and headed towards the faculty room. The real reason was simple. He had been late for the meeting and had been volunteered for the task. This was going to cut in on his time for coming up with new ways to train his students. With any luck, he should be able to get through at least half a box before his class started. Good thing he had an afternoon class. Today he just have to evaluate his students' growth and discuss ways to train their quirks. The sports festival was 5 months away after all. He needed to keep his promise to Aizawa-sensei. But that was going to be rough. His students were progressing, but they haven't exactly made any major breakthroughs. Who knows, maybe some of them will surprise me today. A lot could happen in 10 days. Izuku-sensei, he heard the ever-familiar voice of Nejire Hado call to him, her head appearing from one side of the pile of boxes. Her typical cheerful expression was mixed with her usual curiosity. Her long blue hair hung to one side. What are you doing? Ah, Nejire. He stopped, shifting the weight of the boxes before his fingers tore off. Why was paper so heavy? I'm charged with reviewing some of the applications for the new first years. What? I thought there was like a million applications a year. Nejire popped her head around the other side, looking up and down the tower of boxes. It was getting rather heavy. This doesn't look like a million applications, Izuku-sensei. Well, these aren't the hero course applications, most of them are for support and general course. He took a breath and tried to straighten his shoulders. He should probably start working out, just enough to not struggle with paperwork. And, Izuku-sensei? Nejire hummed, moving in front of the boxes, fingers lacing into the topmost box carrying holes. Do you not like it? If she took that box she could call him whatever she wanted. His arms breathed a sigh of relief when that topmost box began to slide forward. No, it's fine, I'm more used to being called Izuku anyways, it's just different. Oof, heavy. The box slipped free and Nejire went down with it before she popped right back up. There, now you can see too. You're a lifesaver, Nejire. He smiled and continued on his way to the faculty room. But why Izuku-sensei? She tilted her head that was eye level with him, as she continued to move smoothly forward, the box held high on her chest. Is this the part where I ask, how is Izuku-sensei? Oh, or what is Izuku-sensei? Nejire. She giggled, spinning around with her usual energy to the other side of him. Sorry, sensei. It's just that I'm really happy you're my teacher. I feel like I've learned the most with you, so I wanted to call you Izuku-sensei. Ah, that makes me glad to hear, Nejire. You can call me that, but the other teachers might think it's rude. He watched as she continued to look him right in the face, her smile not once fading even as she walked backward in front of him. Why do you keep circling around me like that? I said it was fine. Oh, I know, I'm just waiting for you to notice. She beamed, her blue eyes dancing like she had just aced a test. He raised an eyebrow. Notice something? Why was it that whenever a girl wanted him to notice something he just couldn't? Sure, his only example was Melissa, who had wanted him to notice her new haircut. But Nejire's hair was the exact same. Or was it? It was long and still slowly curled in a twin helix. Did you get a new haircut? Izuku-sensei. Nejire snorted and rolled her eyes. She bit her lip before lifting up her foot. No, but I'll give you a hint, look at my feet. He looked down. Her feet weren't touching the ground. She was hovering. She could hover, while holding a box, and move. The boxes he was holding fell to the ground, sending papers everywhere. Wah! A noise escaped him as he looked at the empty ground below Nejire, then back up at her to see her smiling widely. Nejire! You're flying. He ran over to her and she dropped her own box, embracing him in a hug. I know. Congratulations. How'd you do it? What was the breakthrough? How much time did you spend practicing during the break? The hallway spun, his feet off the ground. This is amazing. You can even carry a person. They were both laughing. I don't know. I was just at home one day cooking dinner and just being happy and thinking about class, then I realized I should try to do some small stuff, but I was already floating. She half giggled, diving forward as her hair began to envelop him. Her feet kicking like she was doggy paddling through the water. Since then I've been able to fly easily, sometimes without thinking. That's amazing. Midoriya-sensei. Aizawa-sensei's voice was like a cold blanket that made him realize several things. The applications were now all over the floor, he was being loud right next to a classroom, and he was currently hugging a student while floating a few inches off the ground. What are you doing? Oh, he looked at the ground, then at Aizawa-sensei, then at Nejire. Can you put me down, Nejire? Sure. She guided them down and let go of him. She landed on her own feet and fell forward, catching herself on his shoulder. Sorry, Izuku-sensei, she laughed, trying not to look at Aizawa directly. I should get back to class, I'll see you later. She ran off, bowing at Aizawa along the way. Sorry, Aizawa-sensei. The scruffy-looking teacher nodded. His gaze was cold and uncaring. Try to be less noisy in the future, Midoriya-sensei, you are a teacher here. Right. He saluted, saying the word just loud enough to make himself wince. Sorry, sensei, I've just been working with her for half a year on that and. It's fine, your eagerness and genuine excitement are why the students like you, just don't get carried away. Aizawa placed a single hand on his shoulder before walking away, leaving him alone with 3 heavy boxes and a pile of papers to pick up. So much for getting anything done before his own class started. 4x, normally, on the first day back from break you're half asleep and ready to crawl back into bed. Yu rested one elbow on the cafeteria table, her other hand tapping her chopsticks like they were a set of drumsticks. Yu had changed again, she got a new piercing over her right eye, and her hair had grown out a bit now reaching her neck and was dyed a royal purple that just made her pop. Nejire hummed, a bite of rice still in her mouth as she plucked away at her food. She blinked at Yu trying to figure out what her friend was saying. Why wouldn't she be happy to be back to school? It was where her friends were and she got to see Izuku-sensei again. And she had been so excited to show off all of her hard work to Izuku-sensei. Maybe she shouldn't have said it just happened, he might have praised her more. She did spend all break in her apartment playing the longest game of The Floor is Lava, ever. It made her stomach hurt like she had to poop and had just done a bazillion sit-ups, but it was worth it. Yu tapped the table again. So Spill, why are you so happy? Why wouldn't I be happy? She squealed kicking her legs under the table as she took another bite of her lunch. I get to see my friends again, I got to show off my new flying skill to Izuku-sensei, and I got to see him again. I'm so excited about what we're going to do in class today. I bet he has a super awesome lesson planned for us, like how before break we talked about how generally each generation of quirks are becoming more complex. Oh, or how certain countries handle quirks differently, with places like the United. Seriously Nejire, if you don't stop gushing about how great Midoriya-sensei is I'm going to start thinking you have a crush on him or something. Yu sighed, sitting back down to pick at her food. But, I guess he is a pretty good teacher, just wish he'd do more lecture for the support and general course. A crush? Nejire blinked, looking down at her food. She had a crush on a few classmates before and even dated one of them in middle school before she came to UA, but now any crush she had lasted a few minutes until she got distracted by something. But, she didn't get distracted with Izuku-sensei. He could keep her attention without even trying, and he was always so nice, cheerful, and eager to help, and he was smart. But did she have a crush on him? How did she normally realize she had a crush on someone? She thought they looked cute, and Izuku-sensei was cute. She wanted to see them smile. Izuku-sensei's smile made her day whenever she saw it. She wanted to impress them. Half the reason why she tried so hard to learn to fly was so that Izuku-sensei would be proud of her. And she wanted to hold their hands and kiss them and do couple stuff. Did she want to do those things with Izuku-sensei? It was easy to picture him holding her hand as they walked through the snow, her humming and skipping with every step. She'd sneak glances at him, their eyes meeting and lingering as they smiled at each other. He'd say something silly, they'd laugh. Then, when no one was looking he'd lean over and kiss her on her ear, taking her by surprise as her entire body warmed up. Yep, she wanted that. You're right, she sat with her back straight as she continued to eat her meal. How should she go about it though? How old was Izuku-sensei? Did he have a girlfriend? She should ask him. If he did it was no big deal, it was Izuku-sensei's happiness that mattered most. Huh? Yu looked up from her food, her pierced eyebrow raised. Right about what? And you know you're floating, right? Huh? She looked down and saw that somehow she had started to float. This was the power of Izuku-sensei. With her tongue out she slowly navigated back down onto the bench, landing was still the hard part. Oh, sorry, that happens now. But what was I right about? Yu gave her a small smile twirling her chopsticks between 2 fingers while sighing. I mean, I'm normally right, but what specifically? Oh, about me having a crush on Izuku-sensei, she smiled and caught herself about to float again. First, she had problems floating now she was having problems not floating. She knew she should have been worried when she found herself napping while floating. Yu dropped her chopsticks, a fake smile on her face. Could you repeat that Nejire? I think I misheard you. I have a crush on Izuku-sensei, she repeated shoveling more rice into her stomach. That's what I thought you said. Yu sighed her head sinking downward. You know he's a teacher, right? Yep. She nodded, he was a good teacher too. Actually, him being a teacher might have had something to do with why she liked him. He was a responsible adult and he just made her happy. Yu's hands fell on top of her head pulling at her purple locks. And you know that he's old, right? What? No he's not, he turned 21 over the summer, and his birthday is only 3 before mine so he's like 4 years older than me. My dad is 8 years older than my mom, and they might have started dating when her mom had just graduated. Lots of girls married older men. Or maybe that was just her family. Yu groaned. That's not the point, your dad wasn't your mom's teacher. Seriously Nejire, you shouldn't go after him if you don't want him to lose his job or something. Oh, that's okay, she hummed plucking another bite of rice. I can wait until I graduate before we get serious. Yu only groaned. Besides, teasing Izuku-sensei for a whole year sounded like fun. 4x. Keep it up Tamaki, you're getting more versatile with your quirk. Izuku smiled at his shy student. Tamaki lurched forward, hand over his mouth like he was going to puke and shuddered. A mass of octopus tentacles and crab claws retreated back into his body as he headed toward the nearest wall to hide. Right, then Tamaki, we'll work on you taking praise next. You're doing great. The black-haired student nodded. Looking over his students he found that all of them had come back from their short break far more eager than before, even a few of the lackadaisical ones were giving it their all. Was he beaming with pride? It felt like he was beaming with pride. He looked at his clipboard and flipped through the sheets. All right, who's next? Izuku-sensei. Nejire called darting over to him. She moved gracefully through the air, closer to a fairy than any bird that he could think of. With her hair following after her like a comet's tail she circled him, a wide smile on her face. I did the obstacle course, she held up her hands. 10 times, I told you it would be easy now, what's next? That's great Nejire, now we just need to work on you using your blasts while flying. He headed towards the pile of equipment and dug around until he found some flags. Oh, these should do, why don't you? He turned to see her face upside down and inches from his own face. Like any warm-blooded man that had rarely been this close to another person let alone a female, he froze, dropping the flags he had gotten out, his clipboard slipping from his fingers. Why are you so close? He squeaked. Am I? Nejire backed away and righted herself in the air, hands clasped behind her back. Her control truly was remarkable. She stuck out her tongue, leaning forward in the air. You didn't say that this morning when you hugged me. What? His face felt red as he remembered Aizawa's judgmental eyes. TTH, that was different. You just surprised me with your ability to fly and I got excited. Nejire laughed, spinning in the air before darting down to pick up his clipboard and the flags. I'm just teasing you Izuku-sensei, I like hugs. She gave him back his clipboard. I'm okay with getting a hug from you whenever. Oh, well. He probably shouldn't say anything to that if he wanted to keep his job. That's, good to hear Nejire, thank you. Now for your training, you should set these up around the obstacle course and try and blast them while flying. She took a set of flags in each hand and began to wave them about like they were a pair of wings. That sounds like fun. He coughed, rubbing the back of his head and looking over at another set of students that were working on their own quirks. Yep, that's pretty much the plan. I was also going to say you should try to use your quirk to move as much as possible to increase your endurance, but I can see you're already doing that. Yep. Nejire cheered, holding up one hand like the flags were a pom-pom. Flying is fun. She then blinked and flew down beside him once more. Hey, Izuku-sensei, do you live alone? Yes. Why? Just curious is all. Nejire smiled before darting away. You're Hitoshi Shinso, right? Izuku smiled at the young purple-haired teen as he entered the empty classroom UA had loaned him for the day. The large table in front of him held a wide assortment of papers, folders, and documents spread out like a professionally catered meal at a wedding. He stood, placing one hand onto the table to move Hitoshi's file closer to him, while at the same time offering his hand to one of his potential students. He was told that there was going to be another interviewer with him, but they hadn't shown up for the past 6. That's right. Shinso nodded and took his hand. He had a strong handshake that was betrayed by his tired expression. Poor kid wasn't even out of middle school and he already looked like some of the cram students on our island. And you are? Oh, right. I'm Izuku Midoriya. I'll be teaching quirk theory to the first and second years. It's actually why I called you in for an interview. Even after 6 such interviews today, he still wasn't quite used to this whole process. He was so used to being the interviewee that he was ready to be on edge whenever someone entered the room. Ah, Hitoshi scratched the back of his head, unwilling to meet his eyes. Is that something new they're teaching to the general ed students? Not at all. As much as I'd love to teach the general ed kids as well, I'll be busy teaching the hero and support course, although the support course will be more an opt-out elective type class. Kind of like the workshop, but different hours. He waved his hand and looked down at Hitoshi's file. There was a lot of good things, but one glaring negative stood out to him. So, why bring me here if you're not going to teach the general ed students? Hitoshi's politeness vanished as the student to be ground his teeth. That feeling of frustration, the feeling of anger, Izuku knew them well. It says here that your quirk is a limited form of voice control that's activated by your voice, and that you call it brainwashing. It really is a potentially powerful quirk and very well suited for. He paused when Hitoshi's fists clenched for just a moment. Is something wrong? The young man let out a breath, his shoulders slouching as he relaxed. Sorry Midoriya-sensei, it's just. I'm used to people saying that my quirk is well suited for being a villain. He looked at the chart, and tilted his head to the side, then looked at Hitoshi. Oh, I suppose it would. But that's not why you chose UA, and I doubt you chose UA for its general education course. So, Hitoshi, the primary reason for this interview can be boiled down to a single question. Hitoshi's eyes grew wide as he spoke and the hints of a smile also began to bloom. Poor kid smiled like Aizawa-sensei. Did you choose UA because you wanted to be a hero? It felt really good to ask that question. It almost felt like he was a real teacher really helping someone find their path in life. And the look on Hitoshi's face made all those years of studying, cramming and planning worth it all over again. Yay, that's right. How did you know? Because it was the same reason why I wanted to apply to UA when I was your age. Back then, I thought that if I got into the general course, then there was a chance, however small, that I might be able to make it into the hero course. He shrugged and let out a sigh. But, I didn't even make it that far, and instead, someone else showed me a different way. He should send Dave a gift basket. But you're not like me. You have a quirk, a subtle one that's powerful in its own way, and I think you can make a great hero. Hitoshi's stoic features had crumbled away as tears streaked down his face. Maybe that was how he looked when Dave offered to take him to Island way back then. The boy choked and whipped at his nose. Sensei, He sniffed looking him in the eye, nobody's ever told me that. Don't get me wrong, it won't be easy for you, and it's not a guarantee yet. He turned the document towards the hero wannabe and pointed at the faults. His physical fitness exam. With all but a select few exceptions, physical fitness is beyond important for a hero, and your results were just barely better than his when he was Hitoshi's age. Are less than stellar. What do I have to do? He couldn't help but smile just a little bit more at that response. It's too late for the entrance exam, but given your grades and exam scores, you should pass the written proportion. May is when we hold the sports festival. By then, you'll need to have a sub-8 minute mile and the ability to do at least 10 pull-ups. That's it? Hitoshi almost laughed. You're right, that's not very heroic, is it? Oh, I know. Make it to the tournament section of the sports festival and you'll be allowed to stay in the hero course. He might have to check if he actually had the authority to do that. Understood. Hitoshi bowed, a giant smile on his face. Thank you for this chance, Sensei. I won't let you down. I'm counting on it, mostly because he wanted to see just how far he could get Hitoshi to push his quirk. 4x Izuku let out a yawn, as he made his way off campus for what felt like the first time in forever. On top of class, he also managed to do a grand total of 8 interviews. Alone. Most of them didn't stand out, but Hitoshi's just made him smile just by thinking about it. Nay, Izuku-sensei? Nejire asked as she hopped up beside him, her book back held in front of her as she traveled beside him. Speaking of smiles. He turned to look at his student, she was hovering again. What is it, Nejire? And you know you should walk when you're out of school, right? Huh? She looked down at her feet and squeaked before landing. Sorry, Sensei, I just get happy and then I start floating. But why are you so happy? And tired? Did Sensei get a girlfriend? He let out a laugh as he turned out the front gates. Nothing like that, Nejire. I just had a busy day filled with interviews for potential first years. Oh, so that's why you look so tired, you actually had to work today. Her hair swayed violently as a sudden gust of wind hit them both. It was slightly wet and he saw a dark spot grow on her coat, followed by another, as the first few drops of rain suddenly started up. Right, he forgot to check the weather today. Maybe he still had an umbrella in his bag? I'll have you know I work hard every day, Nejire. I'm just teasing you, Izuku-sensei, she laughed, swaying from side to side as she dug through her own bag. Another gust of wind and the rain began to build up. Aha! He found it. How did he use this one again? Oh right, there was a button on the side. A thin green slime-like string shot out of his umbrella, and latched onto the sidewalk a few feet away. Then it was ripped out of his hands and stuck on the concrete like it was cemented onto it. Right, Melissa's grappling hook. Why did she make it look like an umbrella? Sensei. The rain stopped pouring on him as Nejire took a step closer to him, her giant umbrella, looking like spring sneezed all over, blocking the rain. What was that? Thank you, Nejire, he sighed, closing his bag up. That was a gift from a friend of mine. And now it'll be stuck there until at least tomorrow. I see. Seems useful. She half laughed, still holding the umbrella up over his head. Did sensei forget his actual umbrella? He wasn't even certain he owned an umbrella, it appears so. Then let me walk you home, sensei. She stuck her tongue out, adjusting her bag with her free hand. You live nearby, right? Yay. Wait, how do you know that? If you rode a train you probably wouldn't be as late. Ouch. Now he was getting roasted by his own student. The rain began to pick up, turning into a harsh deluge. I wouldn't want to impose on you, Nejire, but if you could take me to the nearest store I'd be able to buy my own umbrella. She nodded, and began to lead him through the rain. Hey sensei, Nejire hummed as they waited at a corner. You're not going to be teaching the third years, are you? Nope, by that point your work-study program will be in full force, so you simply won't have the time for my class, and I won't have the time either. I'm going to be busy teaching a bunch of classes this spring. Well, I'm happy you're going to be a full-time teacher. Nejire hummed, nearly skipping next to him as they crossed the street. But I'm going to miss you being my sensei. I really liked your class and I feel like I can really become a hero because of you. Was this how Hitoshi felt earlier? No, that couldn't be it. Some rain must have just hit him in the tear duct or something. Thanks, Nejire, that actually means a lot to hear from one of my favorite students. But hey, even after my class, I'll still be your sensei, right? Nejire hummed, placing a finger on her cheek. I guess you could still be my sensei. Does that mean I can still show up and ask you a bunch of questions every day? Sure. I'll probably be opening up the playground after class like the support class does the workshop. That way I can still assist students that need help developing their quirks. They turned a corner and a store came into view. But I'm not sure it'd be useful to you. I think if you wanted to improve you'd have to force a major breakthrough, but you could still train your quirk to improve your endurance. Oh, I'm sure you could think of some new way to torture me. She stuck her tongue out at him and leaned over to bump him in the shoulder. But really I just want to spend time with you. You're like my favorite sensei ever. Oh, I know. When I don't have work study, can I help you with the after-school quirk theory class? She gasped, turning to him, her blue eyes sparkling like when he first told her she could fly. She floated in the air, feet tucked behind her like she had been stuck in the middle of a jump for joy. I can be your please, Izuku-sensei? She was so excitable. Sure, I'd be happy to have your help. 4x Izuku-sensei came out of the store after a minute and unfurled a plain black umbrella. He really should have gotten something green. Or one that had All Might on it. Was there an All Might umbrella? Probably. He had a flash drive, so why not an umbrella? Would an All Might umbrella be a good present for Izuku? Nejire jumped over to Izuku and tapped her umbrella against his like she was making a toast. Boop. Boop. Was that what she was going with? Thanks for walking me to the store, Nejire. Izuku gave his usual nervous chuckle. I'll see you in class tomorrow, okay? No way, Izuku-sensei. She stood next to him, making certain to hold eye contact for as long as possible. I want to see if you live close to me. That way when I get bored and have a question about quirk theory and stuff I can show up at your place and ask you questions. His chuckle turned into full-blown laughter as they made their way through the streets. Fine, but I'm not going to let you see inside, it's a mess. That was easier than she thought it would be. But if you really want to ask me questions you could always just email me. It's on the syllabus I gave out at the start of class. But that takes forever, and by the time I get the answer, I'll have like 6 more questions, and it's not the same as asking you in person. Really, she just liked talking to him. The questions were a bonus. Or was it the questions that she liked and talking to him was the bonus? Izuku paused and began to fish something out from his bag. You have a point, and if you're going to be helping me next year it wouldn't hurt to give you my number in case something comes up. So long as you promise not to give it out to anyone and to not actually call me every time you get a question, and no texts after 9 p.m. He pulled out his cell phone. It had an All Might protective case, and smiled at her. Without missing a beat she tapped her phone against his, sharing their contact info instantly. Was it really that easy? Not only was she going to find out where he lived today, but she also got his contact info. Maybe he thought she was harmless. Well, she was. What was the right word for it? Was there a right word for it? She'll just have to work hard and make sure that by the time she graduates, Izuku would think of her as someone dateable. Good thing she had over a year to do just that. Looking down at her phone she saw Izuku's profile picture. He was standing in a lab coat next to an older man, and a blonde-haired girl also in lab coats. Who was she? Was she a friend of his? An ex? A sister? Unrequited love? Hey, Izuku-sensei, who are the people in your profile picture? Oh, man, I need to update that. That was back when I was still on I-Island. The guy David Shield, he's the reason why I was able to go to I-Island. The girl is his daughter, Melissa. They're good friends of mine. Well, at least she didn't have any competition. He had competition. She had major competition. Nejire did her best to keep her smile as she watched her geeky sensei and crush Izuku laugh as he held up one of the numerous gadgets that the tank top wearing pink-haired cutie had made. The girl had interesting yellow eyes that had crosshairs in them, and her thick pink hair was pushed back by some complex headgear that probably did all sorts of neat things. All of that was fine. It certainly didn't bother her at all that Izuku was completely ignoring her. Sure, she asked to come, sure this was about interviewing Mei, but really, she wanted his attention too, and, she wanted to play with neat gadgets too. Haha. This is absolutely amazing, Mei. Izuku laughed as he used one of her gadgets. This one was just like his umbrella grappling hook but not made of green slime, to hang from the ceiling. That's not even its final form. Mei cackled, her goggles falling onto her face as she bounced up and down. She had the same mad, overly enthusiastic look that Izuku had. Once I'm able to get more materials, I'll be able to create a launcher that'll send it well over 100 meters and be able to pierce concrete. Not to mention I'll be able to create a dozen other designs I don't have the money for. Just thinking about all those delicious materials has me salivating. I have so many super cute babies to create. Do you take requests? Izuku-sensei asked as he was now hanging upside down by Mei's gadget. The support course students and head are refusing to make me anything new, but I frequently need new gadgets that will test their quirks. How fast can you make something? Depends on what it is, how big it is, how long you want it to last, and what materials there are. Mei beamed, saluting Izuku as she got way too close to him. But I can take on any challenge. Even boneheaded ones that go against common sense. Good answer. Izuku fell from the rope and landed in a heap before he popped back up. Really, it's impressive you've managed to accomplish all this with a junkyard, and while being homeschooled as well. Even if your exam scores aren't the best, you clearly have more than enough talent to get into the UA support course. Yes. I knew you'd be impressed. Mei placed her hands on her hips, beaming with pride, her chest bouncing. Wasn't she supposed to be in middle school? Wait, wasn't she about the same size in middle school? Oh right. Puberty is weird. Thank you for coming all the way out here, sensei. I look forward to working with you in the support course. Sure, but if you want me to teach you, you'll have to sign up for quirk analysis. It's really the only class I'm qualified to teach at the moment, and I'm sure that even someone with your natural talents could benefit from it. Izuku adopted his more teacherly persona, his smile replaced by a soft frown that he had when he was trying to figure something out. I do just have a few questions for you though. Oh, well, I guess this is an interview, after all. I guess I couldn't get away without a few questions. Mei scratched the back of her head. She had questions too. Like, why did they go all the way out to a junkyard to meet this girl? Why did it look like she was sleeping in a garage? Where were her parents? What did that thing over there do? Why were her eyes like that? And was her hair soft? And how old was she? Also, did it hurt to sleep in a hammock like that? Was that grease on her nose or just a skin thingy? Maybe it was something else or something. So many questions. But Izuku-sensei said that she shouldn't be the one asking these questions and to leave it to him, and she wanted to impress him with her impulse control, and it was getting really difficult to not just blurt something out. What if she exploded? Why's your assistant floating? Mei asked, looking over at her. Because she does that when she's not thinking about it. I'm really tempted to tie a rock to her, or something. Izuku chuckled, flashing a smile at her. She was floating again. It was getting hard to not do that unless she was tired or something. Sorry, Izuku, I was just thinking about stuff. Maybe her quirk turned all the questions she didn't ask into power? Right, back to what I was saying. Why UA? With your genius desire for inventing, you'd be able to do well there. There'd be more chances for you too. I want to go to UA because that's where the heroes go. Mei nodded to herself. I want to be able to support my future clients and have my name known, not just some new label from my island. No, all of my babies are going to be custom-made works of art tailored designed for the hero's needs or my own madness. Izuku nodded, a growing smile on his face. Very admirable, Mei, though I do think that a visit to I Island would be helpful to you. If you sign up for my class, I'll think about taking you there over summer break during the expo. Izuku-sensei. She huffed, marching over to him to pull on his shirt. What about me? I want to go to I Island too. It was true, even if she did mostly just want to spend time with Izuku over summer vacation. Sure, I Island was far from the beach trip she wanted where she'd woo him with this super cute bikini she bought earlier, but I Island was a chance she wasn't going to miss. You do? But aren't you going to be busy with work study during that time? I know Mirio has already been scouted, but shouldn't you be looking into that as well? Yeah, but I won't be doing that for the whole summer. I'll still be able to bug you, and I'd definitely be able to go to I Island with you. If you don't take me, I'll be upset with you. She used her secret weapon, ultra pouting. Besides, she still needed to find hero agencies that would accept her, something that might be easy after the sports festival. It didn't really work on Izuku-sensei, and he just laughed. Don't worry Nejire. I have some connections back there so I have a few guest passes for the expo. If you're free I'll be happy to take you. I think you'd get along great with Melissa, both of you would. Huh? Mei perked up from a workbench, already working on a new project. You're still here? Did you need something else sensei? I need to start looking for a new garage near UA. Well, apparently Mei did live in the garage. 4x. Thanks for letting me come with you today Izuku-sensei. Nejire hummed as they walked down the road that lead to the junkyard that Mei had apparently adopted. It was a lot of fun meeting that girl. Izuku couldn't help but smile. Mei was that special kind of genius, and if he got in good with her early on then he'd be able to request all sorts of new gadgets to develop his students' quirks. Like a set of leg weights for Nejire because she couldn't stop floating. Still, it said a lot that she could do it so naturally now, and it was better for her overall endurance and quirk development. As long as she didn't start sending out blasts just by sneezing it was probably mostly okay. She did have her provisional license after all. No problem, you were a great help, but I just can't help but wonder why you'd want to waste your Saturday, especially since finals are coming up. Not that he was worried about Nejire passing her classes, she didn't ask a lot of questions because she didn't understand, she just wanted to know. It was a good trait about her, if somewhat impersonal. And you're right. Mei certainly was interesting. I think she'll be a good fit for UA. Are you sure you don't just want to let her in because she'll make you a bunch of new ways to torture us? Nejire landed next to him, hands behind her back and a skip in her step. Or maybe you just thought she was cute. What are you talking about Nejire? She's way too young for me, and not my type, at least I think. Oh, sensei has a type? Nejire bounced over to him, smiling brightly. Tell me, I want to know. Didn't they have this conversation before? Isn't that kind of personal Nejire? She was all but in his face, her blue eyes sparkling with unbridled curiosity. There was no point in resisting her when she was like this. But, no, please Nejire, this isn't the kind of conversation I should be having with a student. I'm not going to talk to you about why I'm not attracted to one of my future students. Mostly because it's obvious. We're not talking about Mei anymore. Besides, I think she sweats oil or something. Wait, that sounded mean. I meant it in a good way. But I want to know what kind of women sensei likes, like why didn't you date anybody back on Island? How did she not have his entire life story by this point? It wasn't like he didn't try to date someone on Island, but more often than not things just didn't work out for any number of reasons. Mostly because they were all busy. We were just kind of busy with research and school there. I realized that I wasn't really attracted to most of them despite being good friends. That wasn't to say there were no one-night stands or stress relief relationships, but those were few and far between. And not something he was going to tell one of his students about. Oh, so, huh? Nejire paused, placing a finger to her cheek and tilting her head. You didn't really tell me anything though. So you didn't really have a girlfriend back then? Not really, no, and that was all he was going to say on that subject. And are you looking for one now? Nejire asked, still skipping beside him as they headed towards the nearest train station. Because I heard Kayama-sensei say you were cute, and that if she was a few years younger she'd eat you alive. He sighed, pinching his nose as the still fresh memories replayed in his mind. I know, she tells me that once a week. So sensei doesn't want to date someone too young, or someone that's too old. Nejire hummed by his side, her hair swaying from side to side. What's sensei's age range? That wasn't really what he said, but she wasn't wrong. If it was anybody but Nejire asking these questions he'd suspect something. But Nejire was always two things, cheerful and curious. He really enjoyed those traits about her. It probably said a lot that she really was the closest thing he had to a friend since moving back to Japan. Well, I think 10 years is a bit much, so maybe like 5 years at the most? He shrugged, he never really thought about it. Really, I just go with what feels comfortable. I see, Nejire hummed next to him, looking much happier for whatever reason. 5 years, huh? Yeah, something like that. I don't know, it's not set in stone. Personality mattered a lot, and just the overall feel he had for the person. Maybe he was being too picky about it. I mean, I do want a relationship at some point, but I haven't really tried to get one, I guess. A train sped past them, its brakes screeching as it slowed to the station just up ahead. And Nejire leapt in front of him, placing a finger onto his chest. Well then Izuku, her lips curled into a smile when said his name, just his name. If you don't have a girlfriend by the time I graduate, I'll be your girlfriend. His mind did a funny thing as Nejire beamed at him. She stopped being just his student. Just enough for him to realize that Nejire was a very attractive woman, and she was expressing interest in dating him. All at once he imagined what that would be like to date her, what life would be like with her at his side. And much like these past few months with her in his class, he found those thoughts filled with joy. The reality came crashing down. Nejire. You shouldn't tell me something like that, even if you're joking. He stepped to the side trying not to look at her. Mostly so that she wouldn't see the blush on his face or the fact that he was actually smiling. You're my student. For now maybe, but don't worry sensei, I won't do anything until we're both ready. She stood beside him, her usual distance feeling much closer than it really was. I'm just letting you know so you have more than a whole year to consider your options. He remained silent as they walked towards the train. He had heard about students getting crushes on their teachers, but he never thought it would be possible for someone to get a crush on him. He was just some nerdy quirkless guy. Maybe Nejire was just teasing him. Their eyes met when he tried to sneak a look at her. Her smile brightened, causing his blood rush and his heart to pound. He needed to calm down. He needed to be rational. Nejire was just his student. That was it. His funny, amusing best friend of a student that was really pretty and probably the cutest thing in the world, and fuck. He was so screwed. Please don't tell anybody else what you said today, Nejire, it might make things worse. She tilted her head as they boarded the train, Nejire sitting just to his left. Oh, I know sensei, I don't want you to lose your job because of me. That's why we're going to wait until I graduate. That way you won't get in trouble for dating your student. Or you could get a girlfriend by then and I'll back off. And what if you graduate and I don't want to date you? She hummed, finger tapping her cheek. Do you not want to date me, sensei? Please don't use the word date and sensei in the same sentence. That's not a no, it really wasn't. Nejire was dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Not dangerous in that she would hurt him, she could certainly, but given his quirkless nature that was simply his reality. No, Nejire was dangerous in a more subtle way, like a skeleton in his closet just waiting to ruin his whole life and that he had no control over. Not that Nejire was trying to do any of that. True to her word, after making her intentions known, Nejire acted just the same as she always did. No, aside from a few hints that were quickly becoming more and more obvious to him, Nejire was perfect. She was happy as always, cheerful as always, asked questions as always, and was a huge help, as always. No, the problem was him. Izuku sighed, looking over the same paper once more. It was the last bit of work he had to do before the new semester started. But once again he found his mind wandering towards Nejire. He already had difficulties not seeing his students as his friends, and at first, he thought nothing of it. But, now with Nejire's he couldn't help but see her as a potential romance. And it was more than a little distracting, just knowing that she had a crush on him. She hadn't even done anything since then. It wasn't like he wanted to get her in trouble over this. No, there was a firm line that was allowed and Nejire hadn't crossed it. What on earth was he supposed to do about all of this? I am coming. The door to the teacher's room slammed open and the last person Izuku ever would have thought entered the room dressed in a tight-fitting yellow pinstripe suit. All Might. Through the door like a normal person. Izuku fell backward, rolling out of his chair and gawking upwards at his all-time favorite hero. All Might. He stammered, trying to get back onto his feet. What are you doing here? All Might was here? Now? At UA? He had heard he was in the area, but for him to suddenly appear at UA during the spring break while he was the only teacher in the room, something strange was going on. Was he dreaming? If it was the first one where Nejire wasn't asking him weird questions. Not that she needed to know that she's been in his dreams. I'm a new teacher here. All Might pointed a massive thumb into his chest and smiled, his near 7-foot-tall figure dominating the room. And you must be Dave's boy, young Midoriya, if I'm not mistaken. He's told me a lot about you. All Might placed both hands on his hips and let out a laugh. I think he considers you the son he never had. But don't let little Melissa hear that. You're a teacher here? He had to be dreaming, just had to be. Certainly, I believe I'll even be splitting classes with you. All Might held out a hand over his mouth like he was telling a secret despite his voice remaining the same volume. I must apologize to you though, it appears as though Nezu has been piling on my workload onto you and I forced you to do all the interviews solo. Thank you for your hard work. Ah, Izuku blinked slowly and nodded. Yep, he was dreaming. It wasn't that big of a deal, I managed to get everything done in the end. Haha, that's wonderful, I see you're everything that Dave said you were. Melissa seemed to think highly of you as well. All Might patted him on the back, knocking the wind out of him so fast that the resulting vacuum brought it back in. He said that you were a genius when it came to quirks and that he trusts you with all of his heart. All Might's hand rested on his shoulder as the number one hero took a breath. And because we will be working together, there is something that I must trust you with. Yep. This was very much a dream. He hadn't had a dream like this in a while. I'm flattered, All Might. Really, All Might was complimenting him. But I'm just some kid that really likes quirks. I'm nothing special. Nonsense, I've seen your research, you're one of the brightest minds of your generation. In addition to that, you have a natural desire to help others. That's how Dave found you, was it not? All Might took a step back and squared his shoulders. Perhaps if you were a few years younger my search would be over. But, as it stands, perhaps you can help me. I mean, I'd be happy to help, but I'm not sure what I can really do for you, All Might. Izuku let out a breath of air, his shoulders slumping to one side. I'm just some kid that really likes quirks and heroes. Exactly. All Might pounded his chest. Normally, I wouldn't expose myself such as this, but the word of my friends and my sidekick combined with this gut feeling I have about you tell me that this is right. Steam erupted from All Might, and in its place was a skinny malnourished man with blonde hair. I need you to help me find the next pillar of peace and justice. Yep. He was dreaming. 4x Nejire blinked as she saw Izuku-sensei wandering around outside. The late March showers had been persistent in her spring break, which had put a serious damper on her fun. Sure, she spent a lot of time with her friends, watching movies and having a few study sessions that turned into pillow fights, but it just lacked the usual zest she associated with spring. With another sip of her tea and finished it. She might not have been planning on seeing Izuku-sensei before classes started again, but when her dorky sensei was out wandering the streets without an umbrella again, who was she to just let the opportunity pass her by? Besides, if he kept walking out there in the rain he'd get a cold. Finishing her tea and leaving money on her table, she rushed out the door to catch up to him. She flew across the street, on purpose this time, and landed right next to him. He looked, lost in thought, more than normal at any rate. It wasn't until she was right next to him with her umbrella covering him did he realize she was there. Nejire, what are you doing here? He asked, shaking his head briefly. Protecting you from the rain, sensei. She hummed, swaying from side to side, giving him time to process things. But what are you doing here, sensei? I thought you were still at UA getting things ready. Izuku blinked and shook his head again before looking around. Sorry about that, Nejire. I was, but then I went for a walk and I guess I got lost in thought. You took a walk in the rain? She asked, raising an eyebrow at him. Without an umbrella? I mean, I've run out to dance in the rain, but you're completely soaked, Izuku-sensei. What happens if you get a cold? Well. He stammered, blushing as she drew in close. Well, I just had a lot on my mind is all, and I forgot my umbrella at UA. You really shouldn't be too concerned about me, thought Nejire. She handed him the umbrella and started to push him from behind. His back was absolutely soaked. We're going straight home. You're completely soaked. I wouldn't be surprised if you ruined your vest. Nejire. What? You don't have to. I can get home on my own. She stopped and walked in front of him, hands on her hips and one eyebrow raised. Either I walk you home, or I fly you home. Actually, the idea of carrying Izuku to his apartment bridal style was really tempted, but he probably wanted some dignity. Besides, trying to fly with someone might be hard, though maybe she should practice for a rescue mission. Okay, don't get so pushy, Nejire. Izuku sighed, and began to lead the way to his apartment. I just have a lot on my mind is all. You always have a lot on your mind, though. Like you have more on your mind than I have questions about things, and that's like, mega bizarro. She hummed, enjoying the fact that Izuku-sensei was now carrying her umbrella. No wonder you always forget your umbrella. You got me there. He smiled at her, raising an eyebrow. Though for some reason you always seem to show up whenever I do forget it. Why is that? She shrugged. Well, someone has to keep track of you. I bet Melissa had to constantly take care of you back on our island. The guilty look on Izuku's face told her that she was not wrong. Well, she did do a lot for me, making sure I was fed and, achoo. Your immune system is bad, sensei. Am I going to have to wait for you every day when there's a rainstorm? Izuku sniffed and rubbed his nose with his sleeve. The fabric was so wet that it was nearly transparent. You do that even when it's not raining. And I'm fine, this is just, achoo, allergies. I'm fairly certain allergies don't make you shout, achoo, sensei. Now come on, let's get going before things get worse. She turned her head and looked at a nearby market. Actually, didn't Izuku-sensei mention that he doesn't really cook? Actually, 1 second, I'll be right back. She spun, flying towards the store, and emerged a moment later with a bag full of vegetables and other soup stuff. The sight that greeted her was Izuku-sensei looking considerably more miserable and a bit like a lost, and thoroughly soaked, puppy. He sniffed, his nose sounding like it was already full of snot. What did you get? Dinner. She beamed, holding up both bags. Thanks for waiting. No problem, it's your umbrella. Another sniffle. So, what's been on your mind, sensei? More than usual? She asked as they turned another street. They were close to his apartment, maybe a few streets away. Maybe she should have dragged him to hers. Wait, that would be much worse for him if someone found out. Her going into his apartment was already risky, but him going inside hers would probably be too much. Oh, well, I met All Might today, and talked to him for a while. Izuku sniffled a smile on his face. Apparently he's going to be teaching the hero course to the first years. Oh, she blinked, staring at a group of kids as they crossed the road. I don't think I'm supposed to know that yet. Izuku-sensei shrugged. I didn't know until today, and I'll be working with him a lot. Apparently, he was supposed to be the one helping me during those interviews. Oh, well, I guess I would have found out in a few days when class started up again. True, I'm still trying to process the whole thing. They continued all the way up to Izuku's apartment, and then stopped at his door. Thanks for the help, Nejire. I'll see you, Achu, at school. Oh no, you don't, Izuku. She pressed a finger into his chest, holding up the bag of food she bought. I'm going to cook you dinner to help you get over your cold. But, no buts, you need this, Izuku-sensei, and I'm not taking no for an answer. 4x he caved. He caved hard. Very, very hard. He looked into the small kitchen he had as Nejire hummed to herself. The apron his mother had gotten him was being used for the first time for its intended purposes. Her normally long flowing hair was tied back into a ponytail, and he had a hard time not thinking that Nejire was actually really cute. That and her food had smelled amazing. The smell hadn't hit him when he was in the bath minutes ago, but at that point, he was too focused on the fact that Nejire was 2 rooms away while he was naked. And now he was sitting at his kotatsu as he watched Nejire cook. This was wrong on so many levels. He shouldn't have a student in his apartment cooking him dinner, he shouldn't be enjoying it, he shouldn't be wanting it to happen more often, but he was. Hey Nejire? Yes, Izuku? She said his name again in that cute way she had. It was so different when she didn't include the sensei. It was far too personal and sent a shiver down his spine. She turned to look at him, smiling brightly, a ladle in one hand as she poured soup into a bowl. What is it? Oh, He paused. Okay, he really was sick. Well, I just wanted to know why. 'Cause you're sick. I like cooking, and I wanted to see the inside of your apartment. She looked around. It's cute and cleaner than I thought. Oh, thanks, but that's not what I meant. She slid the bowl in front of him. It was a thick and healthy broth filled with vegetables. It kind of looked like some of the soups that the American restaurants offered on our island. It also smelled fantastic. Oh, Nejire sat across from him, blowing on her own bowl. Then what did you mean? I wanted to know why you told me that you like me. That sounded more awkward than he wanted it to, but was probably the right amount of awkward. I mean, you said you wanted to wait until you graduated, but if that was true, then why tell me now and not when you graduated? Oh, she blew onto her soup again. Her smile sent a chill down his spine. I could have waited, but I wanted you to know so that when I do graduate I'm not just your student anymore. I wanted to put the idea of me being your girlfriend in your head before that. I guess that was kind of manipulative. Sorry, Izuku. He probably shouldn't tell her that it worked. Besides, you seem like the dense kind that would have problems accepting girls' feelings even if she confessed to your face. She probably wasn't wrong. Nejire hummed as she moved about the playground, getting things all for Izuku-sensei's class set up. There were even more things this year. But that made sense. He had like 3 classes he needed to teach. It still sucked that he wasn't going to be teaching the 3rd years. But, at least she got to be his ta for one of the classes. She spun, setting up another obstacle in the ceiling, a set of bars that were dangling at different levels and angles. She had no idea what they were for, but they looked pretty. Twirling in the air, she saw the others hard at work. Mirio and Tamaki were also setting up some new goodies, and then there was that pink-haired girl with the cool goggles and the big boobies, Mei. She was currently working on air. It was a thing. While Izuku was pacing in front of the door, going over his clipboard like a hawk. With a smile she dove down towards him, stopping just short of crashing down into him. She circled him, like a shark in the air, waiting for him to pay attention to her. Normally he was aware of her before she was even aware of him, and he'd been extra jumpy since she told him her intentions. Which was good. It meant he was thinking about them. But right now he was completely lost. Reaching over, she flicked a bit of his hair and he didn't even look up. His hair was so fluffy. Maybe she should ambush him and give him a haircut. It was getting rather long, wasn't it? No doubt that would leave her adorable sensei trembling the whole time though. In many ways, Izuku was just as chicken-hearted as Tamaki, but he had this odd bravery about him that acknowledged those fears he had and kept pushing forward. He really was amazing. Or maybe that was just her crush talking. Izuku-sensei, she sung, plucking one of his hairs as he turned past her again. He jolted straight up, like someone had cracked a whip, his posture being corrected as he turned to look right at her. His face went red and he touched the back of his head. Oh, Nejire. What is it? Nothing, really, you just looked like you needed a distraction. She spun around and sat down in the air, her legs crossed. It wasn't perfect as she was slowly spinning upside down. She could correct it, but this was fine too. So I'm here to distract you. Did you finish all your quirk theory ideas for your new students? Oh, for the ones I think need it, yes, but for the majority of them, they're going to be dissecting their own quirk to try and develop their own exercises. I'll still be helping them along the way, but now I have 2 years to teach them what I taught you guys in 8 months. Izuku laughed and tapped his clipboard. That way I don't have to plan for 90 students, even if Mei could keep with the orders. The pink-haired girl popped her head out of her contraption for a moment before diving back into it like a squirrel. That kind of sounds like you're being lazy, Izuku-sensei. She hummed, now completely upside down. Thankfully she wasn't in her school uniform and just a plain shirt and a pair of shorts. Otherwise, she'd basically just be flashing Izuku-sensei. His face went red and he turned to the side. Well, I was busy enough with one class, and learning to pace myself is important for a job like this. I'm still going to give it my all, it'll just take a bit longer. She squinted her eyes staring at his hair. It was so wild. He'd probably look really good with like an undercut. She'd have to get Yuyu's advice on that. Is there anything else, Nejire? Can I cut your hair? No, darn. Wait, if he kept growing it maybe he'd put it into a man bun or a loose top knot. He'd probably look super good like that. 4X Class 1B had gone well enough yesterday. Naturally, they were disappointed that they were unable to do hero training that day, but thanks to that red-haired girl Itsuka the class was quick to settle down and even enjoyed his first lecture. That practical portion went good as well, as he thought a lot of their quirks were really interesting. Especially Nieto's. But now, it was time to introduce himself to Class 1A, which should be quite the event. On the one hand, Hitoshi Shinso was in that class, likely because of the interest that Aizawa had shown in the boy, but on the other hand. Hello. He smiled at the class walking towards the podium, trying really hard not to make eye contact with a certain student in seat number 17. Maybe he should have taken Nejire's offer for a haircut, or agreed for that plastic surgery trial back on Island. He really should have known that he would have ended up here. With his back to the class he held his head high and began to write his name on the board. My name is Izuku Midoriya. I'll be teaching you quirk theory as well as overseeing the practical. Deku. Oh fuck. Here we go. What the fuck is a quirkless loser like you doing here? Portion of the course where we will be, he attempted to continue. Oi, Deku. Fucking talk to me. Katsuki. He heard one of the students start, it was a female. How do you know Midoriya-sensei? And you shouldn't talk to him like that. Bullshit. He's just some quirkless loser that used to babysit me. He was really fucking worthless. Katsuki continued to growl. I bet he's just a janitor pretending to be a teacher. Isn't that right, you useless? Oh. So this was what it felt like to snap. He slammed his clipboard down onto the podium, the snap silencing the room. Katsuki Bakugo. Sit down and shut the fuck up. If you call me Deku one more time, or even so much as swear at me one more time, I will everything in my power to make sure that you're expelled. And I know Aizawa-sensei would agree with me in a heartbeat. The class was dead silent, and the look on that awful little shit's face as he stared at him wide-eyed was everything he had dreamed of. He really should have stopped babysitting Katsuki after the first time, but he had a crush on Mitsuki and the money was good. Stupid teenager was stupid. Still, it was technically because of Katsuki that he met Dave. He took a breath, overlooking his students, meeting each of their eyes for just a moment. Except for the girl with the invisible quirk, he just kind of guessed with her. He righted his tie and composed himself. Sorry about that. He smiled at them, trying to dispel his outburst. It is as Katsuki said, I did used to babysit him and I see that he hasn't matured at all. That got a few chuckles and a growl. I am indeed also quirkless. Which means I was never a hero. So many of you might be wondering what I can teach you. Which, considering how they had pro heroes teaching English, seemed a bit hypocritical. At least they had degrees and credentials. The answer is simple. I've spent 5 years on Island researching quirks. I know them inside and out, and the principal of UA agrees with me that knowing about quirks will make you better heroes. I've been a teacher here for 8 months and have worked with the students of Class 3B. If you want to see what my course and my knowledge can help you achieve, watch them at the sports festival. He sighed again and smiled at them. Now then, are there any questions before we begin the introduction? His heart was pounding as he answered their questions. A few were personal questions, others were about Island, but most were directly tied to quirk theory. A few students, such as Momo and Hitoshi, asked almost as many questions combined as Nejire did on his first day. Maybe he should have had some of his students show up to speak about the class. No, that would have been problematic. Tamaki wouldn't have been able to speak, Mirio would have wanted to fight them, and Nejire would have asked a lot of questions. A demonstration would be ideal, but without knowing the base, his new students would likely just assume that the abilities were their baseline without acknowledging their hard work. No, the best course forward was to demand their trust and teach them to the best of his abilities. Besides, he didn't have enough time to look over all of their quirks to formulate simple tricks. So, Midoriya-sensei, like what's the point of this class then? A pink-haired girl with black and yellow eyes, yellow horns, and pink skin asked, leaning back in her chair. Mina Ishido, she wasn't all that great at academics, but her practical skills were up there. Shouldn't we be learning this stuff in hero training? Yes, and no, he turned his back to them and began writing on the board. In the hero training course, you'll be learning how to perform a rescue and live combat skills. In my class you'll be learning to use your quirk to its fullest potential, and later in the year you'll be developing your super moves with me. He turned smiling at them all again. Does that clear things up? They started to roar with excitement at the idea of super moves. Well, most of them were. There were a few confused looks like they had no idea how to even make a super move with their quirk. And then there was Shoto Todoroki, who just looked at him indifferently. Katsuki just glared at him, his pen on the paper as he took notes, or more likely drew angry drawings. Sensei. A boy with red hair shot his hand straight up. Eijiro Kirishima. How exactly can I improve my quirk? It's just making my skin hard. There's not a lot I can do with it. But that's the point of the class. To figure out how. Now let's get started. 4x, so, you still have a crush on Midoriya-sensei? Yuyu asked with a heavy sigh. Her hair now a vibrant green that just kind of popped. Nejire hummed, turning her head to the side as she smiled. Yep, I even told him that when I graduated that I'd be his girlfriend if he didn't already find someone. That made Yuyu groan as she sank back against the wall, her book bag being supported by her forehead. I had a feeling you'd go and do something crazy, but for you to actually confess to him, sheesh. You make it sound like you never had a crush on a teacher. She laughed at her friend, poking her in the cheek. Didn't you have a giant crush on Aizawa during your first year? Yuyu slapped her hand away, her face was starting to redden. I did, but I never confessed to him. Besides, you're making it sound like you're already in love with Midoriya-sensei and just waiting to marry him. Love? She hummed, tasting that word in her mind. Oh God, I'm just feeding you ideas now, aren't I? Maybe, she half-sung as she pushed off the wall, as Izuku exited the building. He was looking a bit more tired than normal, and it was only the third day of classes. Oh, I wanted to cut his hair soon. What style do you think would look good on him? Seriously. I mean, he kind of already has that sloppy hot nerd look going on. Just trim it a bit and he'd look better. Yuyu groaned, sliding her bag onto her shoulder. Well, you have fun with Midoriya-sensei. I'm going to go have a normal high schooler life and go to karaoke. Wait, karaoke? She looked at Midoriya-sensei, who was being ambushed by Mei, who had a new gadget. How did she make one already? As several of the other girls also began to crowd around him. She was not jealous. She was not jealous. Izuku looked over at her and smiled. He was pleading for help. Yep, she had nothing to worry about. He might be an adorable nerdy teacher, but he was still Izuku. She had almost nothing to worry about. She waved at him and turned to chase after Yuyu. Wait up, Yuyu. I want to go to karaoke too. Wait. Reward? He squeaked and removed her from his back as she continued to float there, a cheerful smile on her face. What were the chances that she knew exactly what she was doing to him? Oh right, this was Nejire, who he had come to accept as a mad genius when it came to subtle social manipulations. That, or he was just a lonely man and attention made him weak in the knees. What did you have in mind, Nejire? He asked, trying not to freak out. Nejire laughed as she landed next to him, hands on her back. Well, since people are calling us the Big Three now, why don't you buy us dinner tonight? I know you don't have any plans. The truth is what kept that from being insulting. Truthfully, the only thing he had going for him was work. He really needed to go out and meet new people. But she did have a point. With the success of the Big Three, nobody would challenge how important his class was. Or at least they wouldn't for a little while. Sure, did you have some place in mind? He blinked, watching her face light up. That isn't expensive. Oh, I know just the place. Nejire did a flip for no other reason than her pure joy and excitement for the idea. I'll go tell Mirio and Tamaki. We can go tonight. We'll meet you at the gate, sensei. Before he could even speak, she had zoomed down the hallway with the same speed and grace that had won her second place at the sports festival. No matter how often he saw her do it, her ability to effortlessly swim through the air still put a smile on his face. I guess I should check my bank before tonight. 4x. It was just a ramen shop. Are you sure this is the place where you guys want to eat? Izuku asked, looking up at the shop sign dominated by a blonde whiskered man wearing a headband with a leaf on it. A giant Uzumaki right behind him. Of course, sensei. Mirio laughed. This place is full of memories for us, and now we want to share those memories with you as well. Memories? Izuku asked, looking back at his 3-star students. Nejire was bouncing on her feet ready to dive headfirst into the shop, while Tamaki was drooling. Yuyu, who had just kind of joined them, nodded at him. It's where these 3 became friends 2 years ago. Yuyu explained, her hair a deep scarlet red. He'd only seen her a few times and spoken to her fewer times, and each time she had a new hair color. She was Nejire's best friend. Oh, you don't have to pay for me, by the way, sensei. His wallet was grateful, but his generosity refused the notion. Nonsense, Yuyu. You might not have been in my classes, but you're still one of my students. I think. Well, this is for them anyway, so if they want you to join, then I'll pay for it too. You heard him, Yuyu. Nejire twirled behind Yuyu and began to push her into the ramen shop. Come on, let's get our seats, I'm starving. Tamaki nodded and followed them in, his usual shyness being overpowered by his hunger. Shall we, sensei? Mirio nudged him in the arms and winking. It's best not to keep a lady waiting. Mirio, he gasped, nearly falling over. Please don't joke like that. How many people did Nejire tell? Haha, sorry about that, sensei. I guess that joke went a little too far, but you have to admit, even from outside, you and Nejire would make a cute couple. Was it that obvious? With a sigh, he walked towards the shop, instantly being flooded by a hearty aroma that nearly kicked him in the ass. Okay, maybe there was something to this ramen shop. Could we please talk about something else? I could get in trouble with something like that. Oh, right, sorry, sensei. Mirio opened the curtain for him with his superior height and reach. Somehow he ended up sitting right in the middle, Mirio and Tamaki to his left with Nejire and Yuyu to his right. And before he knew it, the biggest bowl of ramen he had ever seen was placed right in front of him. A spice-filled aroma made him salivate at the smell of it, and the presentation was utterly delightful. To Class 3B, Mirio broke his chopsticks and held them in front of his bowl. To one more year. Yuyu cheered. To Izuku-sensei, Nejire hummed. To my students, he joined in, before diving into the bowl and letting the taste set in. He had spent so much time on an island eating foods from around the world he had almost forgotten what a good restaurant bowl of ramen looked like, and to full stomachs. Tamaki was the first to begin slurping. Oh, hey, sensei, Mirio asked halfway through his bowl. I've been meaning to tell you that sir wants to meet you. His head snapped away from the bowl, dragging a good bit of noodles along with it, as he tried to speak. He slurped up the noodles, cheeks flushed by his own childish actions. But he must have heard Mirio wrong. Sir Night-Eye wanted to meet him? Why? Was it about what All Might told him? Or was this something else he does? Mirio nodded. Yay, apparently, he's been looking forward to actually meeting you for a while. I think it's because I spoke so highly of you. Hey, wait. That's not fair. Izuku-sensei, if you're going to meet Sir Night-Eye, then you need to come meet Ryuko too. I'm sure she'd love to meet you. Nejire slapped her hands on the table, drawing his attention back towards her. Really? She was jealous of that. Fatgum too. He barely heard Tamaki mumble from the other side of Mirio. During the internship week, I should have enough time to visit all of your hero offices. Would it be too weird to bring his autograph book? Wait, he still needed to get All Might's autograph. Yay. Nejire cheered. You're going to love her, I just know it. 4x were sweaty palms normal. Of course, they were normal. That was why people had them. It was totally a thing and nothing to be even more nervous about. Especially since he was already so nervous that he was freaking out and about ready to hyperventilate. Sure, he had met All Might. But he didn't have any time or warning about that encounter to work himself into a frenzy. Besides, All Might was by all accounts a very friendly individual. Sir Night-Eye was known for exactly not that, and he wanted to meet him. Was this a test? What if it was a test? What if they were busy? What if something was happening? What if he walked in and they were in the middle of some super important investigation and he ruins it? Ah, you must be the Midoriya-sensei. He spun on his heel to see a tall man with a centipede for a head, carrying a stack of papers and a briefcase. Mirio had told us a lot about you, and mentioned you'd be coming this week. I am Centripeter, a sidekick of Sir Night-Eye. It is a pleasure to meet you. He placed the briefcase down and extended a normal hand towards him. Izuku took in and began shaking it. That's right. It's a pleasure to meet you, Sir Centripeter, sir. I'm here because my student Mirio said Sir Night-Eye wanted to meet me. The bug-headed man's jaws clacked as he gave a polite laugh. I see what Mirio meant when he said you were nervous, but please come on inside. I can assure you our office is not as scary as we make it out to be. He nodded and followed the well-dressed man inside the building. It was a modest multi-story building, complete with an empty reception desk and a long single hallway that extended out into the back. I must say, you're quite impressive, Centipeder said as they passed an empty room. Not many at your age are able to graduate with full masters from I Island, and then obtain a teaching job at UA all within a few months of each other. Especially since I Island runs on the American school schedule. Oh, well, when you basically invent the whole field yourself you kind of get to make up the rules. He laughed, trying not to blush at the praise. I just really like quirks is all. You should learn to accept a compliment. Humbleness is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. More mandible clacking laughter. Sorry, I read that on a message board and had been wanting to say it for a while. Still, it does apply. Not many people invent a new field of study and application in much the same way you do. It still didn't really feel like he did anything impressive, thank you. You're most welcome now then, here we are. Centipeder opened the door and the sound of roaring laughter could be heard from inside the room. Standing off to the side looking quite scared as a blue-skinned girl with short hair, in the middle of the room was Sir Night-Eye as he glowered at Mirio, who was strapped to a large metallic torture machine that was currently tickling him half to death. I'm sorry sir, I'll make a better joke next time, Mirio roared with laughter. See that you... Sir Night-Eye paused, standing straight and turning towards the door. Their eyes only met for a moment, before a deep frown spread across his face. The machine came to a stop. I take it you must be the famous Midoriya-sensei everybody seems to be so fond of. I am. His voice cracked loudly and his hands were shot straight to his sides. It's an honor to meet you Sir Night-Eye sir. I've been a fan of your work for a while. I especially enjoyed your work in the Ubara case where you figured out that the student's quirk was spectral body, and how you worked him down. Oh, so you've heard about that case? Most people know me purely for my work with All Might. He pressed his glasses up and loomed over him. Why was everybody here so tall? Did quirks make people tall? Sometimes it really felt like that. A hand extended out to him, and Sir Night-Eye smiled at him. It's a pleasure to meet you Midoriya-sensei, Sir said simply, and the aura of menace he had moments ago was gone. I must say, I've been waiting to meet you for quite some time. You have? He took Sir's hand. The other man's grip was tight and he stared him in the eyes making him uncomfortable. Did you see me with your quirk? A few times, but beyond that I found your thesis paper to be most intriguing. Sir let his hand go and stood at his full height once more. And I've seen what your training and theories have done to young Mirio, not to mention the others of his class. I originally thought you were wasting your talents with the position. I see now that evaluation was wrong. Oh, he found his hand falling to his side, the room was turning much more normal, and he felt his body relax as he began to smile at them. That was right. These were heroes, he had no reason to be nervous. Thank you, I've gotten a few people questioning why I'm teaching at UA. Why don't you come into my office for a bit? Sir turned, still smiling. Bubblegirl, please let Mirio out of tickle hell, and Centipeder, could we get some tea? 4x Mirio watched as his sensei left for the day, a large smile on his face and his head held high. Even Sir seemed more relieved and happier than normal. Sir, did you see something with your quirk? Sir considered him for a moment and readjusted his glasses. Just a good friend Mirio, just a good friend. 4x when she said that Izuku-sensei would love Ryuko, she did not mean for them to actually be flirting. Sure, she wouldn't stand in the way if Izuku got in a relationship with someone. But she was not okay with being the cause of that relationship. Oh, you must be joking, All Might said that? She heard Ryuko laugh from the table that her and Izuku were currently chatting over. It wasn't her normal laugh, it was her flirting laugh. A cup of tea and a few snakes was all that separated those two. You must be joking. I'm not, Izuku said loudly, somehow completely immune to the fact that he was talking to one of the top 10 most attractive and single female heroes in Japan. It was in a magazine, so it had to be true. He really doesn't know a lot about computers. He left most of that stuff to his sidekicks. I keep having to help him with programs. Oh my, it sounds like All Might is more of a grandpa than the #1 pro hero. Ryuko practically purred. Now, you must tell me, how is that grumpy old Aizawa doing? Nejire bit her finger as she tried to drone out the obvious sound of her crush and her boss flirting. She should have seen this coming. Izuku was cute, smart, and really a just wonderful guy. And Ryuko was finally getting out of a slump after her most recent breakup. She clacked on the keyboard angrily, hoping to drown out the sounds of them flirting and the growing knot in her stomach. Maybe something will happen and they'd have to leave sooner. So, tell me Izuku-sensei. Ryuko's teasing tone could be heard from a mile away. Are you seeing anybody? Her eye twitched. Wah, what are you talking about? Izuku stuttered and stammered. She turned back to see him nearly falling out of his chair. His face was bright red. Like a girlfriend? Oh. Apparently Izuku wasn't aware that they had been flirting for the past hour. She really needed to remember he was kind of dense. Instantly, at least half of her jealous vanished as she watched Ryuko try to chase after a catch that was already in someone else's bag. Okay, so she was still a little worried because really, who was going to try and stop a dragon from taking what it wanted? And now she was picturing Izuku as a princess that she needed to rescue. Why did her brain do weird things when she wasn't asking questions? Oh, so you are single. Ryuko let out a noise that was close to a growl. Well, why don't we go on a date tonight and see if we can't fix that? Izuku fell out of his chair, scrambling backwards. His face was very red. I'm sorry, He stood, and headed towards the door at a half jog. I have a really bad allergy. To incredibly forward women. There was a silence as everybody in the office stared at him. He looked like he was about to explode. Sorry, Izuku squeaked and then bolted out the door. Well, that went great. Smiling to herself, Nejire floated over to where Ryuko was still sitting, a grumpy frown on her face. Ryuko, I think your desperation was showing. That earned her a real growl as Ryuko stood up, her eyes slit as she was about to turn into a dragon. Nejire, let's go out back. I need to work off some steam about this annoying little student I took on as a sidekick. Okay. Nejire beamed. It had been a while since Ryuko had wanted to spar, and this was a good chance. What followed was several hours of grueling torture. For both of them. How are you this bad at waking up? You're supposed to be a hero next year. Hey, heroes sleep in, and you're a teacher. How are you always late? Bad time management. What's your excuse? I like to sleep. I can't argue with that. Now come on, we're going to be late. Wait, are we forgetting something? No, I should have everything. Are you forgetting something? I have our tickets right here. Mine, yours, and May's. Wait, we forgot May. We did? Then why am I standing right here? May, how long have you been there? I slept at the airport. I wasn't going to miss a chance to go to Island for anything. Awesome, we have everything now. All we need to do is... Is that our plane? It was. He felt like screaming. 4x. Thanks again for the ride, All Might. Izuku sighed, relaxing into his seat as he looked out the window to see nothing but the blue sea stretching out before them. It was bad luck that they had managed to miss their own commercial plane heading for the island. And good luck that they happened to run into Mirio and All Might on their way out. You're a real lifesaver. I don't think Dave would have let me live it down if I missed my first trip back. Don't mention it, Midoriya-sensei. All Might gave a weary laugh. We're workplace chums. Consider it an apology for relying on you so much at the school. I think teaching might be your true calling. And I don't think it's Dave you should be worried about. Melissa is the one that'll be really upset. What kind of Uncle Might would I be if I didn't bring home her big brother? All Might inflated to his muscle form and flexed for a moment. Are you going to be okay? He looked behind All Might towards the door where a no doubt mildly grumpy Nejire was pouting at not being able to sit next to him. But hey, at least she got to sit next to May and Mirio. Nejire had the natural ability to get along with just about anybody. You have to be exerting yourself the whole time, right? I'll manage. He deflated and waved a hand that was somehow skinnier than his own. So, since you were coming here with Mirio, are you considering him for your quirk? All Might nodded. My sidekick, sir. Night Eye has been insistent on me choosing Mirio, even taking it upon himself to further Mirio's training. They're both rather fond of you, and I do think that he would make a great successor. Him and Kirishima. Both of them have the easy-to-smile heroism I was looking for. There's a but isn't there, a sigh. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I was once quirkless as well, but I find myself looking for someone that wants to be a hero despite their own inability. For them, it to be something beyond a dream for them. It sounds like you're looking for someone that's quirkless. If anything, it sounded like how he was before Dave found him. Maybe, but I'm not in a rush. Thanks to those exercises you gave me, I've even increased the time I can stay in muscle form a couple more hours. I dare say, you might have delayed my retirement by a decade. I didn't really do anything. I just applied Tai Chi practices to your work, seeing as how it works like inner strength, and just got lucky that it worked. Perhaps, but now then. A knock came from the door separating them with the others. All Might assume his muscle form just in time for the door to open, revealing a very cheerful Nejire, her long hair tied into a single ponytail due to their early morning rush. It still managed to twirl around at the bottom. Izuku, look, it's the island. She darted over to him and stuck her head out his window so that she was all but laying on top of him. He could feel the slight pushes of her quirk keeping her afloat. She was doing this on purpose. Haha. I take it it's your first time to Island, Ms. Hado? All Might boomed. Odd, I would have expected Mirio to share your enthusiasm. Oh, he's afraid of planes, especially if they go over the ocean. He's worried he might accidentally use his quirk and end up in the middle of the ocean. Izuku looked past Nejire and into the other cabin where Mirio was holding onto his chair for dear life, eyes closed, headphones in. Behind him was Mei, who was snoring loudly. It was impressive how much control that girl had over her sleep schedule. Nejire must have been bored out of her mind. Would you like to sit up here with us until we land, Nejire? It doesn't look like the others were very talkative. He offered, looking to All Might for permission. The always supportive man gave a quick nod. Nejire pulled her face from the window and looked at the two of them and then down at the table that was between them. Are you sure? I thought you guys were going to be drinking or smoking, which is why you didn't want to sit with us. Truthfully, it was so All Might could relax. All Might is a pro-hero and was the face of the anti-tobacco campaign for years. Izuku pointed at All Might and then to himself. And I'm a square. Ah, and that's why I like you, Izuku. Nejire beamed and took the seat right next to him. Fingers touching as they. You sure are close with your students, Izuku. It's great to see, All Might bellowed, laughing. And he really hoped that the man wasn't reading too far into it. Still looking at Island, he felt something he had felt in a while. Home. 4X Island was just as wonderful as he remembered it being. The air was filled with the scent of the open sea and gave off a crisp, clean smell that just couldn't be found in Tokyo. And after leaving All Might, and apparently Mirio to a swarm of female fans, he was free to hit up all his old favorites. Which was pretty much the dorm room he no longer had in the university library. Maybe she should actually explore the island as a visitor this time? Alright, first things first is we should go drop our bags off at the hotel and then. Mei's missing. Nejire spoke up from his right as she pointed off in a random direction. What? How? Already? We just got off the plane. How could he lose the star pupil of the support department in less than 5 minutes? Well, when she woke up and got her pass, she cackled and said she had some ideas she wanted to work on and headed towards those buildings over there. It looked like she knew exactly where she was going. Nejire shrugged, shouldering her bag and an extra one. I have her bag though, I'm sure we'll find her eventually. After she gets arrested. That's still finding her, Izuku. She had a point and, wait, you normally call me sensei at least once today, is something wrong? Did I mess up? Nejire hummed, placing a finger to her cheek as she smiled. No, that's not it, I just. Izuku. They both turned to see a blonde-haired woman riding towards them on a Segway. Izuku, it is you. Melissa. He laughed, dropping his bags and opening up his arms to hug her. Her transportation vanished into a small rod as she flung herself at him. Her momentum and mass against his weight and general lack of strength resulted in both of them falling to the ground. Oh my goodness, Izuku, I haven't seen you in forever. How's you, eh? Are you doing a good job teaching? What's Tokyo like? Have you seen Uncle Might? Oh, and who's this? Melissa asked all of those questions as she stood up, looking over to see Nejire, who was doing her best to smile at her. Is she one of your students? I'm Nejire-chan. I'm Izuku's part-time assistant. Nejire beamed, looking incredibly cute in her hero costume. He's told me a lot about his family on Island. An assistant? Wow, I guess you must be really important for them to give you a hero for an assistant. Melissa bumped his elbow before extending her hand out to Nejire. Nice to meet you, Nejire-chan. I'm Melissa Shield. I'm basically this dork's sister. Nice to meet you to Melissa. If you see a pink-haired girl with really cool crosshairs in her eyes cackling madly, that's Mei. She's Izuku's student and we kind of lost track of her. Nejire paused for a moment, tilting her head to the side. If there's an explosion, that's probably her fault. Melissa's face fell. That doesn't sound very good. It'll be fine. But what's your quirk? Why do you wear glasses? How bad are your eyes? How old are you? What do you major in? Have you made anything? Oh, what was that thing you were riding in on? It looked super neat. Nejire has entered rapid-fire question mode, it seemed. Oh, I don't have a quirk. I can't see good without my glasses. I'm 18. I'm majoring in the same field as my father, support items. It's a pocket Segway that's really common around the island. Did you want to try it? Despite the smile on her face, Melissa sounded like she was listing off answers to a test. Oh. Yes, please. Nejire, you can fly. So, I'm not allowed to fly all the time. You're floating right now. 'Cause I'm excited. Melissa's laughter stopped their little argument before it turned into anything. I can see why she's your assistant, Izuku. You two sound like a married couple. He blushed, Nejire just beamed. But is your name Nejire-chan, or is that an honorific? Melissa asked Nejire. Oh, it's my hero name. My name is Nejire Hado, and because a friend thought it sounded cute I decided to just go with Nejire-chan for my hero name. Nejire twirled, letting their bags fall to the ground. I can shoot waves of energy out of my body, so I really couldn't think of a good hero name based off of that. Though now that I can fly, maybe I should have called myself something with fairy in the name. Well, it suits you. Melissa nodded, and thank you for taking care of Izuku. He's a bit useless on his own. I know, he keeps forgetting his umbrella. Okay, he needed to put an end to this. Hey Melissa, All Might and I came in on the same plane. Why don't you go see if you can rescue him and his guest from his fans? We need to head to the hotel and then we'll meet all you at your dad's workshop? He lifted up both his bags and May's bag, smiling at his would-be little sister. He had a feeling she'd get along with Nejire, just was expecting them to at least wait for him to leave before they became best friends forever. Huh? Oh sure, he's a bit busy right now, but I think he'll be more than happy to see you and Uncle Might. This is going to be the first time we've all been together before. I'm so excited. She unfurled her transportation and revved the engine. I'll see you later Izuku. Nice to meet you Nejire-chan. Your sister seems nice Izuku. Nejire hummed, picking up her bags once more, a large smile on her face. I like her. I had a feeling you would. He paused, looking around to get his bearings once more. The hotel shouldn't be too far away. He turned to Nejire and remembered what they were talking about minutes ago. So, why haven't you been calling me sensei today? A soft but mischievous smile appeared on her face as she walked right beside him. With her free hand she twirled one of her hair horns and raised an eyebrow at him. She walked with purpose, her hips swaying, and she took on a more mature pose. You know Izuku, here on our island, nobody knows that you were my sensei. I'm just your assistant. Nejire, what are you saying? I'm saying that if we wanted to go on a date, nothing could stop us. How long have you been planning this? Like a week, when I realized that May wouldn't be a third wheel. She reached into her bag and pulled out a white piece of fabric tied by some strings. I even bought a super cute bikini to show you. He had never been so grateful that they were staying in completely separate rooms just down the hall from each other. The end. Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.